Norfolk, Norfolk, you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of North, on a strip of sandy soil, lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with a friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just a place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. No folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road, bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long.
The clerk, just got a hold of her. She's out in Langton doing the election work. So with that, I guess we'll begin. I would like to remind everyone that our meetings are web streamed and televised, and if you could all please ensure your phones are on silent mode. As well, if you could please keep your camera on and use the hand icon when you'd like to be recognized to speak. We will begin today first with the Board of Health meeting, and then public hearing meetings, of course, will begin at 3 p.m. And with that, I will call to order the Board of Health. First of all, if I could have a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Van Passen, seconded by Councillor Ravitz. All those in favor? And that is carried. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none, we will begin with our Medical Officer of Health update. Welcome, Dr. Hekowicz.
Hi, glad to be here, I think.
We're certainly glad to have you. So thanks for joining us, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. The board members last time that I was rather surprised when Dr. Williams contacted me, since over the years I wasn't necessarily in agreement with necessarily what the ministry has done, but I was terribly surprised now that I'm here that he's left, so I'm not sure whether I scared him out or whatever, but regardless of that. I'd like to talk to you about four things, I guess, today. One relates to what may be happening. You probably heard that the Premier is considering the reopening of schools. I had actually thought that would be already announced by now, but I haven't heard anything. But to fill you in on the background, so there was a letter that went from the Council of Medical Officers of Health that I'm an emeritus, well, I guess I'm an active member now, but I was an emeritus member. You will recall the Latin E means without and merit means whatever. So, but I've been an emeritus member. But anyway, there was a roll call essentially. There was a letter that went from them and Sick Kids Hospital to the Premier indicating the general support of medical officers and pediatricians and other, physicians looking after kids for the reopening of schools. Shortly thereafter, there was a roll call meeting with the ministry with, I think, 34 of the 37 medical officers of health in attendance. And all but two indicated their eager and enthusiastic support for reopening of schools, some as early as the 31st of May. The ministry had really kind of wondered whether people were in favor of June the 7th or June the 14th. The two that indicated not being in favor, one, of course, was Porcupine, because they're having a pretty significant outbreak all through their area right now. And I had indicated that it wasn't my first choice for a variety of reasons after having discussed the matter with the staff. I mean, part of the reasons were not that we've had a lot of children who have had COVID, but for everyone, there were a lot of potential contacts that had to be dealt with because of the school busing in particular, and the fact that some kids took more than one bus. So it had been a great deal of work. And I guess, in talking to the staff, it was felt that it would be far better to put the effort into getting the older kids particularly immunized before the fall, rather than maybe dealing with whatever might come from the opening of schools at such a late date in the year. However, immediately after that meeting, I had contact from the ministry because they were wondering, since I wasn't in favor, whether I would issue a Section 22 order to keep the schools closed. And I responded to them saying, look, I got enough trouble with the farms right now without having to get involved with the schools. So know that I was not looking at issuing a Section 22 order relating to the schools. I have reached out to the directors of the two school boards. I called them today. I haven't heard back from them. I wanted some general discussion with them relating to this, what I expect will be an announcement shortly that in fact the schools will get reopened before the end of the year, if only for a few weeks at best. We'll simply have to cope with that as best we can. I mean, hopefully it won't be a big problem, although in the past, when the schools have reopened locally, I'm told that we did kind of get, a jump in our caseloads about 3 weeks after that. But we'll see what it is. And I've also been in contact with Dr. Locke and Brandt, and we will be having some further discussions relating to, what may occur relating to the school openings. I guess the one thing that's not really involved with that, but I just want to make the board aware of it. Currently, vaccines are available to immunize kids 12 and older. My expectation is that very, very shortly, because I think there is some move now, that vaccines will be recommended for kids kind of over the age of 2. So I certainly believe that very, very shortly, in fact, on our media call earlier yesterday, I kind of put my neck out and said, yeah, I expect that we will shortly hear that vaccines will be authorized for use down to 2 years of age, because there's nothing in theory that would mean that the vaccines currently available are not effective and safe in younger children. It's simply that the research hasn't been there, the case studies haven't been there, and some of the manufacturers are in the process of getting the data to submit to government so that the vaccines can be approved for use in a younger age cohort. I have raised with medical officers in terms of the issue of the amendment to the immunization of school pupils, because we require kids in school to be immunized against a variety of diseases that are far less prevalent than COVID is right now. I'm told that Dr. Williams was in favor. I'm not sure how the new chief MOH feels about it, but I'm told that the Minister of Health is not in favor right now of amending the Immunization of School Pupils Act. I'm sorry, that's probably one of the directors, and I don't know how to turn that off. Anyway, sorry about that. So that's where things stand relating to the schools right now. And do you want a question now, or I can go on to talk about farms as an example?
I guess we could stop now, Dr. Hugowitz, but that's probably makes sense. Any questions on the immunization in the schools from council? Or board members, rather, I should say. Nope. Okay. Looks like you can carry on.
So, in terms of the farm situation, I have reached out to a number of the medical officers that have also issues relating to migrant farm workers. And I've spoken with the two Dr. Locks and the MOH in Niagara, and I'm waiting for I sent an email to the MOH in Windsor, Essex, and I haven't heard back from him yet. I must say I'm getting as divergent opinion as I could think of in terms of what should be done locally. I've also asked the staff to provide me data, to try and help me, decide what best to do right now. And I'm hoping that to be able to come to some kind of a conclusion, probably in let's say a week or so, And I'm certainly open to making changes. I think I've said to the board before that I'm not one of these people that think there's only one right way of dealing with a situation. There are various ways of dealing with situations, but I need to get some more data, and I need to consider this a little bit longer before I come to some kind of conclusion. I'm also been told, although I haven't followed up yet, well, I know that one of the outbreaks, and I should mention that I think in terms of our local situation, I think we've only got one maybe outbreak coming to an end at one of the farms. Based on the provincial data, I guess they look like there's still about 8 outbreaks on farms within the province. So in that sense, we're doing not too bad, I guess. And I'm told that that the Ministry of Labor did lay or was going to lay some charges against one of the farms where I think we had a fairly large outbreak last year, but I haven't followed it up about knowing just what that was all about. So like I say, I hope the board will give me another week or so to come to some kind of conclusions about that.
Thank you, Dr. Hukowicz. Board Member Martin, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Chop, to Dr. Hukowicz. You spoke about waiting for some more data and metrics specifically from staff. What is it that you are looking for?
Well, I'm looking for information to either make a case or not be able to make a case that because of what we did here locally as compared to what other places did, that we somehow reached a better result. You know, I mean, to make any kind of conclusion that things should not be changed, I'd need some data to show that we did better than other places relating to the issue of outbreaks and cases within migrant farm workers. Without that data, then clearly I can't make a case that there should be no change.
Okay, so you'll be looking internally with our previous information, yes. And is there anything at this point in time that you'd like the agriculture community to be playing a role in and sending you?
Well, I forgot to mention I am going to be speaking with OMAFRA people tomorrow. So, I'll see what comes, from that kind of discussion, because, they reached out to me and I asked them, I'd be certainly open to any kind of data that they may have relating to that. And so I will be speaking to them tomorrow, from my home, but I will be in touch with them. So.
Okay. Thank you very much for thank you for your work on this and the fresh set of eyes. That's appreciated.
Member Columbus, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Doctor, I'm hearing from our grower producers locally here that there's a significant number of false positives in the testing. Have you heard anything about that? And can we get some statistics on that? I've actually ran that by Ms. Van Dyke to try to get that information, whether it's in fact true that there are a lot of false positives.
I right now, I don't believe so. And I think the difficulty, well, I'll see what information there may be. I'm not aware that there are a lot of false positives, and I'm not even sure how you collect information about false positives, in the sense of if it's a false positive, then, you got a positive result. And since there is no gold standard to compare that to, I'm not sure how you necessarily decide that it's a false positive or not. But I'll see whatever. But certainly to this point, I'm not aware that this is some kind of significant problem province-wide relating to, to the testing that's being done.
Thank you for that.
Member Van Passen, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Dr. Hukowicz. One of the complaints that the rumblings in the countryside bring forward is this reporting of statistics of outbreaks on farms when they're not outbreaks on farms. They're positive tests at the airport while the workers are in isolation. They've never made it to the farms, but I guess there is a reason for it, because as long as it's declared an outbreak, then there are some subsidies available for the keeping the workers in isolation. But, just that the press picks up on all these outbreaks on farms when they're not really outbreaks. So I wonder if you could comment on that.
Yeah, I know nothing I guess I know nothing about that. Sorry, that's not one of the issues that's kind of come to me. Whatever. I mean, you know,
Well, that was,
I think we declare an outbreak when we actually have, you know, when we have a case. I think we declare an outbreak, you know, when we have a single case in order to, you know, do something relating to it. But I don't think we, you know, report outbreaks just on the basis of whatever. But anyway, no.
so that actually, Dr. Huckowicz, was formed part of the conversation that we'd had. So just maybe to refresh your memory, you know, one of the challenges that we were seeing here in Haldeman, Norfolk is, you know, the farmers took the additional steps. I mean, as a result of the Section 22 order, the idea behind Shanker limiting the migrant workers to 3 to a bunkhouse was so that they would be treated no differently than any other Canadian, and that during that quarantine period, they would be, you know, in kind of a traditional household size, and 3 was the number that Shanker had chosen.
Yeah.
So the idea being that in the quarantine period, they are in fact not in a congregate setting, which was the whole reason to limit them in the first place. So where the board, I think, is having a challenge, and locally our farmers are having a challenge understanding, you know, why one case, yes, one case if the migrant workers were all in a bunkhouse together and farming operations were ongoing, I could see, just like a long-term care facility, you can make the argument that that's one individual living in a congregate setting. However, during that quarantine period, they are in fact not in a congregate setting. And in fact, in some of the cases in Norfolk County, you know, they were staying individually in hotel rooms, and yet that was still deemed, one case was deemed to be an outbreak on a farm, which in turn then there was public disclosure from the health unit, which a number of our farmers, I mean, obviously there's, you know, reputational issues there. It's certainly maybe, you know, making the situation seem worse than it is. You know, there's concerns locally for the treatment of the migrant workers, whether it's necessary to expose them, you know, to kind of that sort of stigma in the community. So I think that's what Councillor Van Passen is getting at there. And I think we had touched on that a bit.
Yeah.
Member Martin, go ahead.
Through you, Chair Chop, to Dr. Huckowicz, one final thought. Have you had, I know you've been very busy and you haven't been here very long at all. Have you had any time to connect with the Ag Advisory Board and have discussions?
Not yet.
I think that they would be a great contact for you. I know you're busy. They're not going to provide necessarily the statistics from our team, that perspective, but they're really a great group of people and they'd probably be very helpful asset.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Okay. So if I can move on then to just general issues relating to COVID within our area. I mean, we are starting to see the kind of the new cases going down. I think we're kind of at the end of maybe 2 workplace outbreaks that we've had. When I've looked at the statistics kind of for the longer viewpoint, I guess what I found is that generally we've done I think we've done reasonably well in terms of, you know, comparison to Canada-wide and to Ontario-wide. The kind of the case rates, because when you bring it down to a common denominator of 100,000 people, the Canadian total case rate is around 3,656. The Ontario case rate is 3,627 per 100,000 population, and our local case rate has been 2,281, so significantly lower. So I think there's some value in living in more rural and less densely populated areas. Maybe encourage people to move out of the big cities where I think things are a lot more dangerous to people. And when I look at the death rates, the death rate Canada-wide per 100,000 was 67 and a half. For Ontario, it was 59, and for our area, it was 40. So again, that there may possibly be some underreporting because, of course, some of the people that have been sick here have been moved out into other hospitals, and I'm hoping that, you know, that we do in fact have all of the statistics relating to the deaths, but that's kind of where we stand. So I think we've done reasonably well overall in terms of you know, the pandemic. In terms of immunization, I guess we believe we're somewhere, over 50%. The province says we're closer to 60 because a number of the people that we wouldn't have actually immunized in our area were immunized, who live here, were immunized elsewhere. So we're probably reaching that 60% threshold for the province in terms of the first stage of the reopening. So I think that's, that's coming shortly. The other thing about the cases that we are seeing, the last 200 cases that we've had, 80% of those people essentially have not been immunized. So I think we can make a good case that the people that are immunized are much less likely to become, ill or to, develop the infection in some way. And we have put out a news release indicating that kind of figure that, pointing out that, you're a lot less likely to get this infection if you've been immunized. So I think that's a good sign as well. And we are making steps in terms of the immunization of the 12s and over. We'll be doing some of that. The pharmacies will be doing some of that, and so I expect that hopefully we'll get a large proportion of them. We seem to have got a fair number that are already registering, and I will see in terms of how well we do as to whether we need to put forward some other kinds of incentives to get people immunized. But so far we seem to be doing reasonably well. We're getting more vaccines, I'm told. I think part of the difficulty in the past was that we had more demand here than we were able to get vaccine from the province. The province is providing additional vaccines, and it's kind of interesting. On one of the teleconferences with the MOHs, there was some discussion about when we'll know, when we've reached a saturation point in terms of the immunization. And I said, well, it's simple to me. When people stop coming, then we'll know. But we'll see. So far, we've still got people coming to be immunized, and we are doing the best we can to do that. So I think that's all that relates to those topics.
Thank you, Serge. It was funny in relation to your comment of the value of living in rural areas. We were having a bit of a joke there for a while. We thought we could market in Norfolk County naturally social distant. So, Board Member Martin, go ahead.
Through you, Chair Chop, to Dr. Hukowicz. You may not know this, although I had a conversation and I didn't have an answer for certain with someone, but I'm hearing about a lot of community members who are returning back to Norfolk County from the States. They still traveled and were able to travel, and they received both vaccinations in the States. Yeah. They needed to produce that documentation when they came back into Canada, and I am told that they are not accounted for in our overall percentage of immunization. Do we know if this is accurate or what the plan is presently, and that may change what our overall percentage is as we look to progress into other phases?
Yeah, I would say right now that no, they wouldn't be included in ours because we didn't provide them the immunization. Again, I don't know that there is any mechanism in terms of trying to get that figure. But I'd also point out that in one sense, all it would mean is that we have a higher proportion of people immunized than we think we do, which is a good thing. And so so to me, I'm less concerned about us underrating the amount of immunization that's done as opposed to overrating it.
Yeah, okay, no, thank you for that. I agree. I just didn't actually have confirmation if they were included, so thank you.
I wouldn't expect so.
Member Roberts, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you to the doctor, and perhaps Heidi Van Dyke would be better to respond to my question here. I'm happy to say that I've successfully booked a vaccination tomorrow, and it's through Rolston's in town here. And I just wanted to mention that it was a really good experience. It was really user-friendly to go through the Rolston's website. I myself feel that I'm a little late to book my vaccination appointment. I might be one of those that felt that I might be jumping the queue, that there might be more vulnerable people that needed the vaccine, and I wanted to put them ahead of me. And I did something I didn't want to do. I booked multiple or put multiple requests out for a vaccine. I didn't commit to multiple appointments, but I just started fishing for. We had some issues with our website at one point in time. I've had a lot of constituents wondering how to book a vaccine. I've contacted the, Norfolk General Hospital. They put me onto a provincial website, and many have had more success actually just, calling and talking to a person and getting their vaccine booked rather than using some of our electronic formats. So I'm happy that I've booked mine now, but, for those that are watching and those that are looking to, now that their turn has come due and they're ready to book their vaccine, how do they go about that in Norfolk County? What's the best way? And what's the relationship with our health unit and some of these private sector providers that will be vaccinating this board member?
So, Board Chair Chop, through you to Member Rabbits, I'm happy to respond if Dr. Huckowicz would prefer that I do so. So thank you for the question. If you are, our messaging is that we encourage people to book their vaccination as soon as they are eligible, and that the best vaccination for you is the first one that is available. So we have multiple ways that people can get their vaccines. So we offer, through the health unit, we offer mass immunization clinics. We partner with family physicians who are doing some vaccinations in their offices as per the provincial prioritization framework. We partner with our community paramedicine programs in both counties to vaccinate very vulnerable individuals who are homebound and are not able to get to a mass immunization clinic. We have a clinic at Norfolk General Hospital. And as you mentioned, Member Rabbits, there are vaccinations available through local pharmacies. So as you discussed your experience, if you are receiving your vaccination through a pharmacy, you book directly through the pharmacy website, and you deal directly with the pharmacy to book your vaccination, to get your vaccination appointment, and to get your vaccination receipt. The community paramedicine program and with the vulnerable homebound individuals, we have been working with the Home and Community Care Program through the Local Health Integration Network to identify who those individuals are and to book their vaccination appointments directly with them through their care coordinators with the LHIN. So if someone or a loved one is in that category, they should connect with their care coordinator through the LHIN, and that's how those vaccinations are booked. The physicians who are immunizing, again, they are identifying their patients who qualify, and they are booking those appointments directly between the physician and the patient. The individuals, the majority of the individuals who are being vaccinated, those who are being vaccinated through our mass immunization clinics, either at the Delhi Arena in Norfolk, the Cayuga Arena in Haldimand County, or Norfolk General Hospital, are booking their vaccinations through the provincial vaccination system. And the link to that is available on the health unit website, which is www.hnhu.org. And there is a link to the provincial website, to the provincial booking system on our website, where individuals can go in and book their appointments, and they will be given their first appointment, and they will be given their appointment for their second shot approximately 16 weeks after the first shot, because that is the dose interval presently for most individuals. if people have a very high risk health condition, that's dealt with separately because those are unique circumstances according to the provincial prioritization framework. But for most individuals, they are booking through the provincial website, and their second dose is approximately 16 weeks after their first dose. For our community members who are not able to access the provincial booking website or who have troubles with the technology, we have a partnership with Service Norfolk where we have a local call center. That's part of the provincial booking system, is that we also offer a call center that, and again, the telephone number is on the website, that if people are having trouble using the provincial booking system online, there is a number that they can call to get assistance over the telephone.
Okay, thanks Heidi for that. Member Taylor, go ahead. I lost him now. We did have Councillor Taylor with his hand up, and now he seems to have dropped off the screen unless somebody else sees him. Heidi, what I'll do is I'll carry on with the agenda if there's no further questions from the board, and then if Councillor Taylor comes back, I'll just allow him to ask whatever question he had there afterwards. Member Columbus, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Question for the doctor, or comment. I'd appreciate to hear from him. And it's with respect to about a month ago, I had a communication with a Norfolk County physician who indicated to me that he had 2 patients who actually had cancer, and 2 other patients who actually had heart issues, and another one was suffering from severe mental issues. And they declined or delayed going to their doctor to get some attention to this matter. And I just want to share, what comments would you have with respect, so the public is aware, they should not be delaying their medical appointments. I take it would be your concern as well as mine.
Well, certainly, I think people that, that have issues, they should be, in contact with their, with their family physicians. I would hope that they would have family physicians. I am aware that the biggest problem for a lot of people is finding a family physician, finding a regular physician. And as I won't go into why that is, but, I have my own opinions as to why there's such a shortage, but regardless. But no, people that have, problems, they really should be in connecting with their family physicians and having discussion in terms of how those problems are best dealt with.
Yes, some of them had apparently delayed because they were afraid of getting COVID through going to the hospital for treatments and that type of thing.
Well, again, I think the issue is they need, they should be in contact with the physician and getting advice in terms of, of what should be done. Again, there's no point in having a health professional if you're going to make all of your, if you're not going to contact them and have discussion with them and try to, find out what it is you should be doing. If you're going to make your own, if you're going to go by your own judgment all the time, then I guess you're going to have to suffer the consequences of that. But that's, that's unfortunate, I would say. I'm put it this way. I'm aware of a number of situations where, very, very indirectly, because there's been an outbreak with people that were simply concerned about COVID, that they ended up having significant other kinds of problems that they should not have had because there wasn't an issue for them relating to COVID, but, because of some kind of being overwrought about the whole situation, they decided to do certain things that in the end caused them significant damage and in fact death that had nothing to do with COVID. But there's no accounting for how some people are going to react to situations.
That's exactly the point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Columbus. Member Taylor, welcome back. I know your hand was up there earlier, but you're good. Okay. Well, thanks, Dr. Huckowicz, for joining us today. We certainly, every Tuesday, we have a council, the first 3 Tuesdays of every month. we have a council meeting, public hearings and counseling committee, followed by the council meeting on the third Tuesday. So if you do get a chance to review the data with staff, it's certainly, one of the biggest challenges here in the community, and certainly that has been a challenge for the Board of Health over the last year and a half is the farming issue. So, if you get a chance to review that, there's certainly an easy opportunity for us to call a special Board of Health meeting before our council and committee meeting. I think the Board of Health, again, we're certainly not looking at Norfolk for more lax restrictions than everyone else, but we are looking for consistency between the health districts that welcome migrant workers. So that has been a concern for a long time.
Yeah, the difficulty is that I doubt very much, no matter what we do, that there's going to be consistency, because given what I've heard from some of the other MOHs already, I mean, there is a marked variation in what's being done. If I go back to the issue about 3 being able to be quarantined, and I'm glad I'm glad you used the term quarantine, because sometimes people are quite lax in their language and they talk about isolation, and quarantine is quite different from isolation. Isolation is in fact the separation of people who are sick. Quarantine is the separation of people who are not sick, but may have been in contact with someone who was sick, and they are quite different terms. And I found that sometimes, people use those terms interchangeably when they should not. But as an example, I'm, in speaking to the MOH in Niagara, he said they quarantine people 1 to a place. They allow no quarantines on the farms directly. They require that they all be quarantined off-site, 1 to a hotel room. I found that rather surprising, but anyway, so like I say, I doubt very much whether we're going to be able to get consistency amongst all of the places, but you have my assurance that I will try to do the best that I can, that that has some proof behind it that it is useful or necessary. But I need to see some data about that first.
For Niagara, I'm wondering if there is once an outbreak has been declared on for the initial?
That's what the MOH told me, that their initial quarantine, when these people arrive, that what he told me was that they require that the quarantine be off-site, 1 to a hotel room. So that, I would think, is probably even more stringent than what we have been doing here. But anyway, I'll be looking for
just to augment the doctor's comments, Niagara changed their rules for this growing season. They were operating under different rules last year. So the Niagara's public health unit has taken a change in their course of action.
And is there any change then with them in terms of the travel from the airport?
I'm not familiar with that one. I just, just with my contact with Niagara region and some of the stuff I read in the newspapers there, I know they changed their on-farm handling going into this growing season. I don't know the details with regards to the bringing of the workers from the airport.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Hukowicz. And like I said, just let us know when, if you have an opportunity to speak with us again before the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Thank you.
If I could have a mover and a seconder to receive the Medical Officer of Health's update as information. Member Michelli, seconded by Member Columbus. All those in favor? And that is carried. Okay, moving on to the minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes, May 4th for the regular meeting and the May 18th special meeting before us. Are there any errors or omissions? Okay, seeing none, they will be declared adopted. On to items of communication. We have 4 items of communications today. Does the board wish to speak to any of the items of communication? Member Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Chop. Through you to Heidi. I wondered if you could expand community safety plan and what the consultant, Ms. Shippey, will be doing. What's the scope of the project? What can we expect?
Thank you, Chair Chop, through you to Member Martin. The planning process for the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan is well underway. The board will likely recall that our epidemiologist, Dr. Catherine Bishop-Williams, recently in 2019 completed a very thorough community needs assessment. And so we are using that community needs assessment as the base for our community safety plan. Ms. Shippey, as the project lead and consultant, is building upon that with some key informant interviews and a couple of focus groups from different sectors, including policing, business, education sector, mental health and addictions, and youth. And in order to add to the community needs assessment and to update it, particularly given the situation related to the pandemic. After that, she is going to be drafting the actual plan that is a strategic plan that will identify the primary barriers or issues that get in the way of people's sense of safety and well-being in our community. And then there will be action items with key measurables and deliverables connected to minimize, if not eliminate, those barriers going forward.
Any further questions from the board? Okay, any other items? Heidi, did you want to talk about the alpha resolutions at the end? Or how you're planning to handle that?
Thank you, Chair Chop. There are 2 of us that are myself and the Director of Public Health who are registered for the Alpha AGM. If there are any members of the board who wish to participate, you can let me know and we can get you registered. As well, if there are any, if there's any specific direction that the board would like to give on any of the resolutions or information contained within the package, or any feedback that you would like us to bring forward at the AGM, we're happy to do so.
Any comments from any of the board members on the resolutions? I think there's still some time, right, Heidi? If people have, I mean, you can send them.
Yes.
Yes. Copy to all the board members and Heidi.
Yes. Thank you. The AGM is June the 8th, so there is some time to provide some additional feedback.
All right, in that case, if I could have a mover and a seconder to receive the 4 items of communication as information. Member Huffman and seconded by Member Taylor. All those in favor? That is carried. We do have one staff report. We only have the public hearings needs to start at 3 o'clock as a result of the notice that has been sent out. I suspect that is going to have some bit of discussion attached to it, so I will leave it to the discretion of the board. I will state that I find it very frustrating that the province is leaving this up to municipalities as opposed to applying a consistent policy across all health units. So I will leave the board to decide whether or not you want to go ahead with it in the next 12 minutes or you want to defer it to the next Board of Health meeting. Member Hoffman, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Chop. I would like to defer this item and where we can have a more fulsome discussion about it. I don't want to rush something like this that has, there'll be some, I mean, obviously there's going to be some, not fallout, but there will be discussion amongst community members regarding this, and I'd like to make sure that we give it our due diligence.
Member Taylor?
I mean, we have had this in front of us several times at this point, so I'm just thinking if there is going to be a deferral, could we defer it to next week and have a special board meeting prior to CIC just to get some expediency on this? I know staff is waiting on a resolution for this.
Yeah, we can, Member Huffman, that's up to you. That's your deferral there, so. Okay, that sounds like it would work. I think it's a little bit challenging in some ways. I mean, I'm a bit, it's a bit difficult, I think, to have a discussion like that in open session, because you're either, you've got a handful of frustrated staff members now, depending on the direction that council goes. The first time this came before us, it certainly was in closed session. With that said, I guess, Jason, if we defer this, can we, again, I know you did it previously, but I'll reiterate it this time. I don't think that was ever disclosed to the public, which is what the policies are in the other health districts, so that the public can understand that this is occurring in other areas. Who is and who is not. Again, I don't understand why the Ford government would leave this to local health units when, I understand it's not coming on the local tax levy, but it's also one taxpayer across the province, and why employees are disadvantaged in one area but not in another. It just, the lack of consistency I find frustrating to deal with.
Yeah, I think not to speak on behalf of the province, I think it's a hot potato issue that is difficult for anybody to handle, and that's why there are some differences between the different health units. Heidi, we can certainly dig up what we had at the time, because there was internal polling amongst all the health units as far as what their policies were, and we can certainly add that to the report for next week.
So that was an issue that I also had. So we'll disclose that at that time, as part of the public agenda. That was the phone call that I made to the clerk at the beginning. Again, I'm not really sure how, when it's, although individuals weren't named, it's quite easily determined as to who the report impacts and doesn't impact. And I'm not sure how this came to be in open session like this. It's pretty hard to have a fulsome discussion on it. Anyway, we'll call the vote for the deferral. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Through
So
Chair
Kevin,
Chop,
yep.
sorry, I just want to confirm that Board Member Huffman moved it and Board Member Taylor seconded it. Is that amenable? Yeah, okay.
And then if you could
and
ask,
it will be
if you could
it'll
ask,
be deferred to next week.
That's correct. So we'll need to call a special Board of Health meeting before the council and committee meeting. And then perhaps Dr. Huckowicz, maybe you could let him know as well that we have arranged that, and hopefully we could hear from him with an update from what he's learned over the past week from the data.
Noted, thank you.
Thank you. With that, okay, any general announcements from anyone? Member Hoffman, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Chop. I just wanted to make note that today is the first day of the acknowledgement of Pride Month, and I'm certain that our flag will be flying high like it did last year. I've had members of the community contact me. And anyway, so just to be aware that this is Pride Month. Thank you.
Anyone else? Member Martin, I think I saw your hand, but is...
Yeah, thank you, Chair Chop. A little bit of a glitch there. Just wanted to note, alongside Councillor Board Member Rabbits, I was vaccinated at Rolston's a week ago Friday. Very easy to do, online booking system, in and out the door in 25 minutes, and I shopped. So they have appointments open, I believe, this week. Their booking system is very efficient and well organized, so that is available to the public as well. And thank you to the Rolston's team.
Thank you. And Jason?
Just to provide some quick feedback to Councillor Huffman, we're just looking into the exact protocols flying that flag while we're at half-mast for another purpose. And because it's not a recognized one in our bylaw, we just need to get the formal approval from Mayor Chop, which wasn't an issue last year, but we may just be a few days before we straighten out all the appropriate flag protocols that we're dealing with currently.
I wondered about that as well. So I noticed that some of the other, there have been the raising of the pride flag in other organizations, but I certainly accept that that's a reasonable expectation, that we've got a few things to work out with that. Thank you.
Okay, with that, if I could have a mover and a seconder for the confirming bylaw, which is bylaw 2021-13BH, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Board of Health for the Halton Norfolk Health Unit at this Board of Health meeting held on the 1st of June 2021. Mover and a seconder, please. Member Taylor, Member Van Passen, seconding. All those in favor? That's carried. And Councillor Huffman, a motion to adjourn. And a seconder. Member Taylor, all those in favor? And that is carried. Okay, so the Board of Health is adjourned. We'll take a 5-minute break and we'll be back at 3 p.m. to start.
Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just the place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road, bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, on a strip of sandy soil, lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road, bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work, we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and
Right, I think we are all set to begin. I will now call the public hearing committee to order. If I could have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Martin and seconded by Councillor Rabbits. All those in favor? That is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. I will now officially open the public meetings held under the Municipal Act, the Planning Act, and County Policy. Please be advised that to preserve your right to appeal to the Local Planning Appeals Tribunal, you are required to make comments or provide written submissions prior to the passage of a bylaw. It is important to note that no final decisions are being made on these matters today. These meetings are to allow the public to provide initial comments, and further reports will come forward to council at a future date. First report is staff report CS 21-23. This is in regards to a proposed closure and conveyance of portions of 4 unopened road allowances and a portion of an unopened 10-foot lane. And Lydia, I believe you're going to present that report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Chop. Good afternoon. Realty Services currently has a backlog of road closure requests and has seen an influx of requests over the past year during the COVID-19 pandemic. This report brings forward requests for the closure and conveyance of portions of 4 rural unopened road allowances and 1 portion of an urban unopened lane. The requests are all of a similar nature, and it is hoped that this group road closure report will expedite the matters for the property owners. The requests have been circulated to the county departments and external service providers, and no objections were received to any of the requested closures. The report the valuations for each property, which staff recommend the land be sold at, to remain consistent with the council approved pricing. All property owners have been advised of the additional cost that they will be responsible for, in addition to the cost of the land, and each has advised staff they wish to move forward with their requests. The road closures were advertised for the entire month of May, and 2 inquiries were received to confirm the locations of 2 of the road allowances. No objections were received. Since the writing of the report, Mr. Jared Smith, who is associated with Property 1, has informed staff that he recently sold his property. He did inform staff of the solicitor for the new owner, and staff will connect with the solicitor to ascertain if their client would like to proceed with the acquisition of the southerly portion of the unopened road allowance. If the new owners do not wish to proceed, staff will seek consent from them to sell the entire portion of the road allowance to Feth Farms. The purpose of this report is to provide the public with an opportunity to comment on the proposed road closures, and with that, we'll wait for comments to come in. Thank you.
Thanks, Lydia. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Okay, Councillor Ravitz, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, I'm just looking at the conclusion of the report. It's on page 9 of our agenda, and it states that there's no obligation on council's part to dispose of subject road allowances. Is this just sort of giving us that option of exiting? Is that to read that there's no obligation of the municipality, or is it proper for council to be named?
It's up to council if they wish to approve road allowance sales. They are, municipal lands that property owners request to buy, but if council wishes that they do not wish to sell any of the municipal lands, then certainly that is your decision.
Any other questions from the committee? I don't believe we have any registered speakers, but I'll just put it out there. Is there anyone online that wishes to speak to this matter? Okay, in that case, does somebody wish to move the staff recommendation? Councillor Columbus, seconded by Councillor Michelli. All those in favor? And that is carried. Next is staff report CD 21-32. This is in regards to an application that has been received to amend the Norfolk County official plan to allow a maximum of 9 dwelling units on the subject lands through a site-specific policy. The applicants have submitted a related zoning bylaw amendment application to permit tourist cabins as a permitted use on the subject lands through a site-specific provision. The purpose of these applications is to allow the expansion of the existing tourist accommodations operation by constructing 4 new tourist cabins. IBI Group group has put forth the applications affecting the lands described as 511 Nelson Street West in Port Dover. And Nicole, I believe, are you presenting the report?
Yes, I am, Madam Chair.
Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Madam Chair indicated, this property is located in Port Dover, and I will start my presentation by first providing some context. The site is located on the south side of Nelson Street West within the urban area of Port Dover. The property is designated urban residential and is zoned R1A. There is full municipal servicing access along Nelson Street West. The surrounding land uses are primarily low density residential, comprised of single detached dwellings, with some open space amenities to the northwest of the site and business district area to the east, or Port Dover's downtown. For council's information, the above picture is just an indication from about a month ago of the current site. To change the zoning to the site to expand an existing tourist accommodation from 4 cottages or tourist cabins and a main dwelling to include 4 additional structures to be used as tourist cabins for a total of 9 units. The 9 units would include 1 permanent dwelling, the 4 existing for rental purposes with legal non-conforming status, and 4 new tourist cabins for seasonal use only. To summarize what has been provided thus far by the applicants, a planning justification report, a functional servicing report, a concept plan, vegetation plan, and architectural drawings were provided in addition to the application. Staff has circulated the documents and application for agency and department comments, and there was nothing significant to flag at this time. A full set of comments will be collected and provided to council as a part of the recommendation report. Staff have received comments regarding this application from the public. 3 letters were provided to council attached to this report, and various letters were forwarded to council through email in the days following the report submission. All formal comments will be provided to council as a succinct attachment for council's review prior to the recommendation, as well as for the public. In addition, staff are working with the agent for the applicant to facilitate an open house meeting currently tentatively booked for June 23rd in the evening. Information regarding this open house will be circulated to the neighboring property owners and council in the next week. In terms of the comments submitted thus far, the following themes have emerged. Existing use being long-term rental versus short-term rental, the interest in maintaining the view of the lake, commercial uses abutting residential areas, as well as previous bylaw issues on the site. I would like to note a few things in relation to these comments. However, a full discussion will be provided as part of the future recommendation report. Firstly, I would like to clarify for council, as I know you're already aware, we zone for land use permissions, not people permissions. So there's no guarantee on who may or may not be the tenants of the proposed uses in speaking to the short-term rentals. Proposed use would be intended for short-term seasonal rentals. However, planning policy is limited in its ability to regulate rental agreements. That being said, staff are currently exploring this topic and powers to regulate such uses through the Municipal Act for the review of council on a future date. Further, staff do understand that there are concerns about bylaw issues in relation to this site. All bylaw-related concerns have been forwarded to the bylaw enforcement team to be addressed through appropriate channels. And finally, important views are identified in the Lakeshore Secondary Plan, and it states the following. The Lakeshore Secondary Plan Area Community Design Guidelines identifies important views within the urban areas, hamlet areas, and resort areas, which shall be preserved, protected, and enhanced through the development approvals process and by limiting development within certain areas. The county shall endeavor to maintain county-owned land, public rights-of-ways, and unopened road allowances where they abut the lakeshore to protect important views and accommodate opportunities for lakeshore access where appropriate, in accordance with the policies of Section 11.6.4. This will be further explored by staff in the recommendation report. In terms of next steps, there will be an open house in the coming weeks to allow additional public consultation regarding the application, given the interest in this file. Following that and additional guidance from Council regarding servicing, a recommendation report will be provided to Council, followed by then a site plan process as well. That concludes my presentation. I would be happy to respond to any questions Council or the public may have.
Questions from the committee? Councillor Columbus.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And a question to staff, and it's with respect to the seasonal use of these facilities. When you say vacation home or short-term seasonal, is that month to month or week by week, day by day? What's your interpretation that these new structures will be used for?
Sure. So the current planning policy doesn't regulate one or the other. Generally, we have similar type policies in our resort areas, which limit the time of year that they can be utilized. That being said, this is a discussion we've been having internally, and we're looking at potential powers that council may have through the Municipal Act as opposed to the Planning Act in regard to kind of the regulation of those issues. But I think the intention would be week to week, but I can let the agent, who I think is going to follow me in the presentation, maybe speak more to that and provide you with more guidance on that topic.
Okay, my second question is with respect to the buildings themselves. I read somewhere that there's 2-story structures that will be constructed. What's the actual footprint size of those particular structures, the footprint?
So at this time we have some conceptual drawings, and I believe those will be included in the next presentation, but all of that would be established through the site plan process. So right now they're just conceptual. But from my understanding and the drawings provided thus far through the process, we're looking at, it's basically a kind of a tiny home type structure. So it's a small footprint for the 4 units with a loft for the bedroom. So a relatively small unit. But again, I think that the agents will be able to speak a bit better to that. And that is obviously subject to the site plan process. And so there could be changes in the future.
Thank you.
Nicole, I don't know whether you can answer this question or not, but what is the trigger for impact that once you move from, somebody has a couple bunkies that are still being taxed at a residential rate? What is the trigger once you get a certain number of units where you're now kind of more resembling a hotel and you're, while it's still zoned residential with a site-specific policy, that it's being perceived as a commercial use? Do you know?
I believe it would be triggered through the building permit process, but I can confirm that for you.
That's something I would be interested in knowing what that threshold is of when the use becomes commercial and once it starts resembling more of a hotel-like situation, how that would come into play. Okay, any other questions from the committee? Otherwise, we'll move on to the presentation from IBI, and you certainly can still ask questions of staff as we move forward. Councillor Van Passen, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to Councillor Columbus's question, I think the drawings start on page 107 of our agenda there, if he wants to have a look at them.
Thank you. I believe that is, so IBI, I'll turn it over to you guys. I think it's Ivana, is that correct? And just a reminder for the participants, there's 5 minutes for the presentations.
Sorry, yes, Ivana is correct. Madam Chair, I submitted my presentation to the clerk. Would I be able to share the presentation on my end of the screen?
I believe you can from your end. If not, Kevin could do it on his if you can't get it to work, but please go ahead.
Okay, on my end would be even better. All right, good afternoon. My name is Ivana Osnicki, and I'm a planner at IBI Group. Myself and Douglas Stewart will be representing our client, Paradise Shores Cottages, in regard to the planning applications proposed for their property, 511 Nelson Street West in Port Dover. We appreciate the opportunity to introduce the proposed development and to receive comments from nearby residents in the area. We also propose to provide a detailed response document following this meeting and the upcoming public open house, which we will ask planning staff to distribute to everyone who has commented. Our clients are proposing to develop 4 tourist cabins in the northwestern portion of the subject property as per the concept plans shown in figures 1 and 2. Our clients informed us that this proposal came about from conversations between county staff and themselves and for tourist accommodations in the Port Dover area. Each tourist cabin will be approximately 26 square meters in area and feature a living space, including a kitchen, a bath, a loft, and a terrace. There will be a gravel parking lot located to the south of the tourist cabins, which will connect to the existing driveway on the site. So no new accesses to Nelson Street West will be proposed. To maintain continuity with the other dwellings on the south side of Nelson Street West and to comply with the zoning bylaw, the tourist cabins will be set back 6 meters from the street. Our client retained an architectural designer to design the proposed tourist cabins. These conceptual elevations are shown here. As Nicole reiterated, the architectural design will be refined through the site plan approval process. So these elevations are very much preliminary. As also explained by county staff, the official plan amendment submitted in support of this application requests to increase the minimum number of dwelling units on the subject property to 9. So this application will firstly recognize the 5 existing legal non-conforming dwelling units in the property and will also permit the development of additional tourist cabins. As county staff also explained, our client is requesting to add site-specific provisions to permit the tourist cabin use on the subject property. We would like to clarify why the proposal included tourist cabin uses specifically, as this was a question that we received from residents. The definition of tourist cabins in the zoning bylaw is a detached furnished building providing temporary rental accommodations for 1 or more individuals in which cooking, eating, sleeping, and sanitary facilities are provided for use by the vacationing public. So in our opinion, the existing and proposed cabins meet this definition, and this was also our understanding of the county's interpretation of this definition. At this point, we would like to address the major themes and the comments received to date. So firstly, a concern we heard from neighbors was that the proposed development would obstruct views to Lake Erie. So based on our site visits to the property, the lake views are partially obstructed already due to the existing structures and vegetation on site. This is another street view perspective. It is a rather wide property, so these perspectives don't capture the experience of viewing the lake through the property perfectly. We also heard some concerns regarding the parking needs of the proposed development. So 8 parking spaces are proposed south of the tourist cabins, which will be screened from street view by the proposed structures, as shown in concept plan B here. 2 parking spaces are proposed per cabin, which is in keeping with the zoning bylaw requirements for single detached, semi-detached, duplex, triplex, fourplex, townhouse dwellings, and vacation homes. We would like to note that there is no parking standard in the zoning bylaw currently for tourist cabins specifically. Our professional opinion is that this parking right is justified for the proposed use. In regard to traffic concerns, through the pre-submission meeting with the county, transportation impact study was not requested. There are typically technical thresholds to determine when a transportation impact study is required. And it's our opinion that the addition of 4 tourist cabins would not warrant this study. We also heard concerns in regard to pedestrian safety. So as you can see on this street view image, sidewalks do only exist on the north side of Nelson Street West, while an unpaved shoulder exists on the south side. It is relatively common in our experience for sidewalks to only exist on one side of the street in residential areas. We are not aware of any site distance limitations with the crossing of the street that would warrant additional pedestrian crossing measures at this time. Concerns have also been expressed regarding the tourist cabins accommodating short-term rentals. Tourist accommodations are encouraged by municipal policy, including the Lakeshore Special Policy Area Secondary Plan, to support economic development in the area. A letter of support was also received for this project from an organization facilitating a faith-based youth experience in Port Dover, which will be renting 2 of the existing tourist cabins this summer, which is one example of the demand for this type of use. Once again, we'll be providing a more detailed review of the comments through our response document after the upcoming public open house, tentatively scheduled for June 23rd. And at this point, we'd be pleased to answer any questions, and we'd like to thank you for your time and consideration.
Thanks, Ivana. How many parking spots are there for the current units that are there?
So let me just flip to the concept plan. So there is there isn't a formal parking lot driveway existing on the property currently. I can definitely confirm for you the number of parking spaces per the existing. Once again, this use was existing before, so it's legal non-conforming, but I can get back to you on that.
No, I understand that, but sometimes it's a negotiation. So if you want the additional 4 units, it might mean providing some additional parking to match those other units. Any questions from the committee? Member Martin, go ahead, or Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. I've lost my raise hand function here. I guess I would like to firstly start off and thank the proponents for coming forward, because I know that you guys have had god-awful timing with your proposal. I believe Ivana mentioned that it was a recommendation from planning staff of the day to go down this venture, and I believe you were in touch with me a few days after we had made some announcements concerning water. So I know it's been a long road for you. I did want to also make a note thanking you for the existing parking, given that there aren't policies on that. That's nice to hear that there are 2 cars per on the new builds. My specific questions for you, and I'm also glad to hear the proponent address some of those community concerns, because it would be a little bit crazy if I didn't note here some of the concerns of the residents nearby. Lots of bylaw concerns, lots of construction concerns, and ongoing work on the property. So I'm sure we'll hear a little bit of that today. But my specific question would be the permanent dwelling on the property. Is that for you to live in yourselves? Is there going to be property management ongoing as these locations are being rented out?
So our clients currently do live in the residential dwelling on the property. And there was also a garage that was built in 2020. Which was permitted by a minor variance application approved in 2019, which was built by the clients partially because they wanted a place to store equipment for maintaining the properties. I will have to get back to you, Councillor, regarding whether any other maintenance measures are currently planned.
Sorry, I didn't pose that question directly to you, because I thought at one point in time I saw them on the screen here, but now I can the proponents directly, but now I can only see your screen. So my other question would be Councillor Columbus's question as well. When you speak, do the proponents have a certain length or duration in mind that we would be able to meet on?
At this stage, that hasn't been decided on. Of course, given the area, I'm gonna I'll get back to you on that. But I don't want to speak for the plans of my client. But yeah, that's something that definitely can also be looked at as we move forward in terms of details and also receiving and incorporating community comments.
If at all possible, I think that they're still on the line here today. If they could maybe shoot a quick email over to you as you field a couple questions from other council members, if they have an appropriate answer. I think that is the point of the meeting today, to try and get as much community input, information out to the public as possible. So if they are aware, not pressuring them to rush into an answer, but if they are aware and they're listening in here, if they could comment on the use of the permanent dwelling, just in terms of if there will be on-site property management. I think that speaks to, you know, if there are noises and parties and late night bonfires and so on, these people are going to be living on site as well, and they're probably not interested in that just as much as the neighbors would not be interested in that. And additionally, the duration of the seasonal rental, if they have that information, I'd be keen to hear it today if at all possible, but I'll let some of my colleagues speak. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Councilor Martin, we can always come back to it as well.
Sorry, Mayor, just a slight question about a name change. Am I crazy, or were we initially Lilac Shores?
Yes.
We were, okay.
Yes. The operation has changed to Paradise Shores Cottage, but it was formerly known as Lilac Shores Cottages.
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, so we do have two registered speakers. Ben Ayers, would you like to address the committee? And you'll have 5 minutes for your presentation.
Hello, yes, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me. So I have several concerns. Some of them you may consider legal, some of them you may consider just, you know, personal and stuff that doesn't pertain. I don't know, that's for you to decide. So firstly, I mean, you speak about maintaining the views and vistas along the shore of Lake Erie, blah, blah, blah. I don't see how this maintains views and vistas. In fact, it's obviously going to impair the views and vistas, you say, for pedestrian traffic, motorists, cyclists, whatever. So that will certainly impede the view of the lake. I'm not looking for a response right now. I've got 5 minutes. I'll blurt out what I've got to say. Earlier, the woman who did the presentation was talking about existing vegetation in the site plan and the vegetation and whatnot. As far as existing vegetation, that is not correct. The owner just 2 weeks ago added 50 cedar trees. And I'm going to tell you, he did it. He expressly told us that he is doing it so that we never have a view of Lake Erie again. So that just kind of goes to the character of the person and how he gets along with his neighborhood and community. You talk about the fact of the traffic and pedestrian traffic. There is a playground and community park directly across the road from this. It is a fairly busy road and became much busier a couple years ago when we had the work on Main Street and everyone discovered, oh, we can go down Nelson Street and there's no traffic lights. So it is a fairly heavily traveled route, especially by cyclists in the season. And I'm concerned, you know, people are going to come in, supposedly, probably families as well as others, and the kids may want to cross over to use that playground and park. So they're going to be traveling across a fairly busy street with no sidewalks and no crosswalk, no stop sign. I personally don't want a stop sign because it'll be at the foot of my driveway. There are many references in the proposed development plan that I read through, 103 pages. Many references to expanding the existing business of tourist cabins. The business was not tourist cabins. Those 4 existing cottages were long-term housing rentals. The people have been evicted and they are now being used as tourist cabins. That is not expanding on something that was grandfathered in the 50s. So it is not an extension of a current business model. There's also, I have concerns about the owner of this property has flagrant disregards for bylaws, neighbors, etc., etc. Just this past weekend, for example, I can tell you that some of those cabins were rented, and they were rented to young adults, whether they are late teens, early 20s, I don't know, who are quite obviously from different households, 4 to 5 of them in a cabin, going back and forth in each other's cabins, none wearing masks, the owner also in close proximity to them without a mask. This is during a full lockdown. There are plenty of businesses in the area that would love to be open and servicing their customers. He was not permitted to do this, and, you know, just disregard for the laws and whatnot of the community. So I'm really concerned if, you know, this is the way he treats the community now. Why should I think that he is going to treat it any better when there's people coming, sitting around bonfires, playing loud music, hooping up? You know, currently they set off fireworks any time of the year in the middle of the night. And, you know, according to our bylaws, we're allowed 2 days a year within 24 hours either way to set off fireworks. You know, if I'm working on a Wednesday night, I don't want to hear fireworks at midnight and when I have to get up in the morning and my dog's going crazy barking and whatnot. This isn't about the fireworks. This is just about the disregard for the community and the bylaws. I think I have expressed all this before in a letter. I don't know. I think that's pretty much most of what I've got to say. So, and my 5 minutes is probably up anyways.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Are there, just a quick question for you. So are there any concerns with parking for the current units that are there?
They appear to have single, driveways next to each cabin, not a community parking lot.
So that hasn't been a concern of yours today?
No, the parking is not a concern.
It's not, okay. Councillor Huffman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Through you to Ben. Just wondering, it sounds like there's been kind of an escalation of issues over the past number of years with this current situation. Have you brought any of these issues forward to bylaw in the past or to your local councillor, or have they been discussed, or is this the first time that you're able to bring these issues forward?
Have been discussed, and I can tell you, for example, I reached out to bylaw for the first time, I don't know, in the middle of the winter, and I went through Amy to say, can this happen or can it not happen? And Amy forwarded my concern on to whoever's in charge of bylaw, and he subsequently forwarded it on to one of his officers, and his email to his officer started out with, "Here we go again with your friends at 511 Nelson Street." So that should give you some indication as to how often bylaw is contacted about this property.
Further questions from the committee? Okay, thanks, Ben. I'm going to ask staff actually a couple questions there at the end about some of the comments you made, so you can stay on the line there. Richard Hahn, are you?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. So you have 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Just to expand a little bit on what was just covered a few minutes ago. I understand that the dwellings and the rentals that we have there right now, they were grandfathered in where maybe at some point there weren't bylaws or strict covenants or that sort of thing in terms of what could be established in this area. These cottages right now are in an urban residential area. There's nothing else around that, which is commercial. And I'd ask the committee who is ever going to look at this, start with a clean sheet of paper and assume that those cottages aren't there. And if someone came to you with a proposal to put cottages on that area amongst the residences and in this urban area, you probably, I would think, reject it, because I mean, these are people's residences. This is an urban area, and to go ahead and approve the expansion of what is already there, I think is wrong. The cottages that were there before, or the 5 cottages that are there now, they were yearly rentals. And now what we're trying to migrate into is weekly rentals or weekend rentals. And we're going to expand the site a commercial site in a residential area, which to me doesn't make sense. Anyway, the other comments that I had here were very, very similar to the previous comments that were made. And that's it.
Thanks, Richard. Are there any questions from the committee to Richard? Go ahead, Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Chop, to Richard, without going into it too in depth, but for the public record and for my knowledge, would you be able to just state what your additional issues are? Are they bylaw related? Are they noise concerns? Are they parking concerns?
Well, the additional issues that I have is that, to what was referred to earlier, there's no sidewalks, and you're going to have people coming in these cottages on a weekly basis, not familiar with the area. And I can tell you that I live at 499 Nelson Street. It's well traveled, and for the most part, people really don't adhere to the speed limits now. I can't imagine what it's going to be like now that the road's fixed up. And what do we think the chances are of some child wandering across the street, no one by themselves, to get at that playground? Because what we're going to create here is a compressed area, recreational area with these additional cabins. These people got to go someplace. And the kids, for room, for exposure, that type of thing, do we really want to take a chance that someone's going to get hit? And as I say, this is a well-traveled road. And now that it's going to be fixed up, it's going to be more travel than it is today. So those are the concerns.
Further questions from the committee for the deputation? Is there anyone else on the line that wishes to make any submissions? Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Chop, I had an email thread this morning with some of the neighbors. There was a miscommunication. They were talking with Jacob. I believe there is a lady by the first name Christina, and there is also an individual, Bob DeRue, that both had interest in speaking today. And I don't see or hear them on the line, but I don't know that they would have been sent the link. So I just wanted to note that publicly, because I received an email. So there may be more correspondence coming, and I don't know what the proper process should be at that point in time if they haven't been on the public record.
Richard Hahn again. I can tell you that, can you still hear me?
We can, yep, go ahead.
Okay. I can tell you that there was an administration error here. I just got access to this system from Jacob 20 minutes before the meeting started. Bob did not get anything sent to him. Steve Zerla, who's lives 2 doors down, he was not sent anything. So there are people that signed up to speak today, and they weren't notified of how to get at the meeting and such. And so there's more people, more input, but nothing was received from Jacob. I phoned Jacob about 15, 20 minutes before this meeting, and he sent me a link.
Okay,
So
thanks.
clearly,
Tricia, are you on the line by chance?
Yes, I'm here.
So are you able to comment on that and what the process would be if we were to hear this again at the next public hearings meeting, if there's others that for a staff error haven't had the chance to voice concerns?
So when the process for registering for a public hearing is there's a page created through clerks, and the communication flows through to clerks, and then they send out the links for the meetings. So from a planning staff perspective, we're connecting with the applicant and ensuring they have the appropriate information and showing them where to register. For the applicant, the individual applicant would be provided that information. But for others, interested members of the public, the registration page is through clerks. So perhaps that's something internal we can connect and ensure that's communicated, because the links they used to connect on the clerk's page as well as the planning page and back and forth. So we'll have to revisit that and make sure those links are still there.
So were the neighbors provided, all of the neighbors provided notice of the hearing?
Madam Chair, yes, everyone was circulated the appropriate notification.
this is Richard Hahn again. I was provided with notice. I did properly register for the meeting. And in fact, when I registered, I got an immediate response that you will be contacted at some point to speak at the meeting. I can't remember exactly the verbiage that was used, but I got an official notice back. But the only way I'm talking to you today is because I had to reach out, find Jacob, and get him to send me a link. And I know that there are other people there that they never got the link, and I know that they registered. Because I was phoning starting at noon today, and I could even send you emails of Bob where he's asking Jacob, how do we talk? How do we get in this meeting? And I don't know whatever happened with him.
Go ahead, Kevin. Did you have comments, or Tricia? Again, I mean, again, if there's people that are out there that are wanting to speak, that concerns me a little bit when it's a change of this nature. If the neighbors don't get an opportunity to voice their concerns.
Through you, Mayor Chop, we can look through our inbox again, but we believe we caught them all. And there were some speakers or some people who wanted to just know the decision or the outcome of the staff, if the staff recommendation was carried or not, and whether, not necessarily to directly speak to the item in a public setting. So I have not seen any correspondence with Bob, but we will definitely look through the clerk's inbox again and double check and make sure we catch everybody.
Well, Richard and Ben, if you hear from your neighbors that they wanted to speak and there was they weren't able to, they weren't contacted or so on, please have them send myself an email to the clerks and they can copy myself on that as well, and we'll try to figure out how to handle that situation. Tricia, go ahead.
Thank you. I was just going to essentially say that. So for anybody that was unable to connect, we apologize for that. Please do send your message through to the clerk and the planning department, and we will collect all of those and ensure that they're part of the final recommendation report, because the purpose of today, as we know, is the information report.
Okay. It's not normal process here, Ben, but I will let you just, if you can keep it brief.
I know, and I will. I just wanted to, I know briefly two other concerns that people were going to speak about, and one of those is property values, which we've sent in a letter from David Putty Real Estate with our concerns about property values being lowered in this area and the volume of sales being diminished. So I already sent that to you guys. I just want to make sure that's a consideration. The other thing people were concerned about, I know that the water plant next door to this site, I mean, for example, for 2 years ago, they put up a gate, presumably to keep the public from using the small beach kind of area down there that really isn't public. So one of the concerns people had were, putting cabins there, are people going to go down and use this unauthorized beach access on the water plant's site? And who's gonna have, liability for that?
No, that's a fair point. Most municipalities, you can't actually get anywhere near their water treatment plant.
That's the point. You'll be able to just walk across the property to it.
It is a very strange thing, that little beach, that's for sure. That's a fair point. Thanks.
Okay, I'll shut up. Thank you.
Okay, so back over to staff. I have a couple of questions. The residents make a valid point, and that's kind of one of the challenges that we're seeing when we talk about housing stock in municipalities. Is a lot of it is decreasing. I mean, it's not just in Norfolk County; it's happening everywhere as people are moving to short-term rentals because they can make more money off a short-term rental than a long-term rental, and why people can't find rental properties available. So that kind of comes back to my question about why this now is not residential to me anymore. Once you get up to 9 cabins, it's now become a commercial use. So and as a result of that commercial use, the taxpayers, I mean, certainly we know there have been bylaw calls out there and so on, or the pictures with OPP dispatch. that comes at an additional cost to the taxpayer. And when you're paying residential taxes and not commercial taxes, that's a significant difference that's there. So why would this have been a site remaining residential with a site-specific policy as opposed to an actual zoning change to commercial zoning, which is what a hotel would be?
Through you, Madam Chair. So this application is based off what the applicant and their agent requested. So there are different ways to approach this, and it could result in a complete change of the designation through the official plan, or a complete change and or zoning. But this was the approach taken by the applicant, and I imagine to recognize what they understood as a non-conforming use, having multiple residential type units existing on this site since about 1950. But yes, that would be the reason why it looks different than what you suggested.
Yeah, but to me, I mean, again, I think the speakers have spoken to that versus you had 4, cabins that were yearly rentals, which is clearly a residential use. But at this point in time, when you start getting into 9 units, to me, that's more beginning to it's a commercial use. It is a small hotel in a sense, and as a result of the commercial use, that comes with additional cost to the municipality. I would also be interested in hearing comments in relation to whether or not these cabins were, in fact, as you come forward and you're asking council for approvals to do something new, that's great. And we do have a need for short-term accommodation in the county. I will certainly agree with that. Is IBI maybe able to speak to this? I have a little bit of a concern if it is in fact true that you're coming forward and asking council for approvals, but you're violating the provincial order as it stands currently. So that's not whether I agree or disagree with the provincial order. The fact is just that the provincial order is there and people have to abide by that. So were the cottages rented out currently for short-term rentals? I know my understanding is Jim is looking at pulling up some of the complaints that we've had to see whether or not this falls under that. Does the applicant through IBI have any comments?
Yes, so I can't speak to whether the existing tourist cabins are rented out during the pandemic. That's not something that I have no idea, to be honest. However, sorry, Madam Chair, also to address your prior question in regard to why we chose this route in regard to, if I can speak to that, to requesting an official plan amendment to add a site-specific provision for an urban residential designation. So that was based on conversations with staff at the time. I realized that there's been some staff turnover at the county. So that was why that route was chosen, just to answer your question in regard to that.
Well, the only reason I didn't direct that question to you, because if I was you, that's the route I would go to, because of course you want to stick with the lower tax bracket. But unfortunately, as I'm now sitting in a different position as mayor, as opposed to somebody that's just an entrepreneur trying to do this, I have to look at other considerations for the municipality as well, which is obviously increased costs in terms of bylaw and enforcement and those kinds of things. So that's why I didn't ask you, and I think that's fair enough that that's the route you tried to submit under, but it was more a question to why our planning staff sort of allowed that to go through that way.
Okay.
Councillor Van Passen. Oh, sorry, and Ivana, if you could find out for me, we are going to have bylaw look into it, but I certainly would like a response on whether or not those units are being rented while the stay-at-home order is still in effect from the province.
Yes, we can definitely ask our clients about that.
Councillor Van Passen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, as an aside, people have figured out that short-term rentals are not allowed, so they rent them for 2 weeks, and they don't care if the people only stay for the 1 weekend. As long as they've booked it for the 2 weeks, it makes it legal. So there's ways around every rule in the book anyway. But I wanted to make a few comments, maybe as the old guy who's done that road a little bit longer. Historically, they were tourist cabins. And, on the other side of the water plant, we had the Bonneview Lodge, which had a store in the whole, what is now a big residential subdivision. Used to be a farm. There used to be a chicken farm on the north side of the road, just on the other side of the gully. Things change. I think the previous owners gradually, as they were winding down, found it easier to go to a long-term rental rather than the more hectic tourist cabin business. But generally they were built and used for many years as the short-term rentals, weekend vacations, 1-week vacations. So I think that really what they're looking at here, it's going full circle again, and you've got a new operator coming in to get it back to its original sort of thing. So there's a lot more history to it than just what's happened in the last year, the last 5 years. I don't even know how long the current owners have owned it, but it hasn't been more than a couple of years, I don't believe, because it wasn't that long ago it was for sale, right? So, and they severed the other house off, and there's a lot of things that changed over time, but it is really going back to its original use back when those cabins were built. So, just a comment from the old fat guy with gray hair. So,
unfortunately, though, Councillor Van Passen, under the Planning Act, in order to meet the definition of legal non-conforming, you have to have met a continuous use over a period of since the beginning. So
rental accommodation is rental accommodation, and it's not been clearly defined in our bylaws over the year. We have zoning of resort residential along the lakeshore, but you can't live there full time. But nowhere do we define what that means, right? So we have to look at the bigger picture on sort of generally the use of it. So and again, I think the planner mentioned this right off the bat, that we're dealing with the use of the land. We can't deal with the people who use that once we decide whether the use of the land is correct. So, a lot of the comments about who might be staying there, what type of thing, we've got to look at the land when we sit as the planning committee, right? So.
Correct, and my comments were directed, what is the use of the land, and the use of the land, has it become a commercial use with the additional unit? So I'm not talking about the 4 units that are there.
I think that is a valid point, and I think you've thought the whole thing through from the consultant's job, that they'll try to take the easy way out or the cheaper route and ask for a special exemption rather than the other way, and we might deal with that when we see the final report, and maybe staff will have recommendations that way, and that's why we're here, for information and looking at all sides. But I just thought I'd throw in a little bit more history there. So thank you very much.
For that. Any further comments from the committee? Okay, so that would just be another question for staff as well, if we could get some comments, I guess, from bylaw before the next report comes back as well. Again, I certainly recognize the need for, short-term accommodations in Norfolk County. It's just a matter of, making sure that this is kind of done in the right way. And I also, if the planning staff would be able to, I think part of that, final report should also include how, how the owners are going to, manage that challenge with the beach there as well, because that is an extremely valid point, and it amazes me all the time that is open and the beach is full right next to a water treatment plant, which anywhere else, you could be arrested if you went within the gates of a water treatment plant. So if there's no other questions from the committee, then if we could have a mover and a seconder for the staff recommendation. Councillor Huffman and seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? And that is carried. Moving on, staff report 2135. That's an application that's been received to create a residential plan of subdivision consisting of 6 semi-detached lots. An associated zoning bylaw amendment application has been received to change the zoning from neighborhood commercial to neighborhood commercial zone with site-specific provisions of reduced side yard, lot area, and lot frontage. 1498745 Ontario Limited and agent J.H. Cahoon have put forth the application affecting the legally described as lands affecting legally described lands as part lots 69, 70, and 78, lot 79, part block 109, lot 2, part railway plan 182, urban area of Simcoe, Norfolk County. And Nicole, I think that's you again.
Yes, it is. Through you, Madam Chair. As indicated by Madam Chair, this property is located in Simcoe. I will cite a presentation with a bit of context. So it is located on the east side of Metcalfe, just north of Grove Street, as you can see in the geographical mapping there in front of you, within the urban area of Simcoe. The property is designated urban residential in the official plan and zoned currently neighborhood commercial. And there's also full municipal servicing along Metcalfe Street. The surrounding areas consist of a variety of land uses, mainly in residential use, identified through zones R1B, R2, R3, and R5. The applicant is proposing 6 semi-detached units, totaling 12 units in total when divided, through a residential plan of subdivision. The current zoning is, again, neighborhood commercial, and they're requesting a special provision to permit the lot arrangement within the subdivision as proposed. So you can kind of see the lots there on the screen. This includes permissions to address lot area, lot frontage, and interior side yards for the individual units. In addition to the application, a draft plan of subdivision sketch, a planning justification report, a functional servicing report, traffic considerations, a servicing plan, and grading, siltation, and erosion control plans were also provided by Cahoon's Engineering. Staff have circulated the documents and application for agency and department comments. Comments of note thus far from that process are included on the slide. So staff are recommending a holding provision until a development servicing agreement can be put in place, being a plan of subdivision. We would like to have the completion of the water and sanitary modeling done for the site and completion of a stormwater management study. So far, staff have not received any public comments regarding this application. In terms of next steps, of the previously identified studies and modeling required, as well as review of all circulated agencies department comments, which obviously provided to council as well, and preparation of the conditions of the draft plan approval. Following the completion of those activities, a recommendation report will be provided to council for review. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Nicole. Questions from the committee? Okay, are there, there's no registered speakers, but is there anyone online that wishes to speak to this planning application?
Thank you, Miss Mayor. It's Bob Phillips from Cahoon Engineering with Mike Quadrachaki, the developer. We've listened to the planner's presentation and are satisfied. I think they did a good job in explaining the development. I noticed in the planning staff report there was reference to an OP amendment, which is not required for this development, which showed up in some of the other documentation, but we're just here to answer any questions.
Any questions from the committee for the engineer? Councillor Taylor, go ahead.
Not so much a question, just want to say I'm happy to see some more dense infill coming into the central business district area, and I'm happy to see this coming along. Actually, one quick question. With that R4 that'll be in the backyards there, that has been approved there, what size fencing are you looking at doing at the back? Just thinking privacy for the inevitable folks that are living there.
Thank you. Just a typical 6-foot pressure treated fence, something to identify the boundaries and give both sides a little more privacy.
Thanks.
Further questions from the committee? questions from the committee? Okay, if I could have somebody move the staff recommendation. And Kevin, perhaps you can turn off councillor chambers. I think that's where the echoes coming from. Councillor Roberts is moving that, seconded by Councillor Michele. Okay, all those in favor? And that is carried. Next application is
Mayor Chop, I'm looking into the issue. I don't know where the echoes.
I'm going to mute Councillor Van Passen. Oh, can I? Oh, you are now. All right, we'll try again. So next application is staff report CD 2136. That's an application that's been received to rezone the subject lands from R1A to R2 to permit the construction of 2 semi-detached dwelling blocks, 4 dwellings in total. Don Field and Son Construction have put forth the applications affecting the lands described as 1077 Bay Street, Port Rowan. And Mr. Wilson, I think you're presenting that today, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this is my first presentation to council, so I appreciate this opportunity. So just to begin, as you indicated, the property is located in Port Rowan. The site is located on the west side of Bay Street, within the urban area of Port Rowan. The property is designated urban residential and zoned R1A, and there is full municipal servicing access along Bay Street there. The surrounding land uses are primarily low density residential, so your single family dwellings, and that's the majority of the land uses in the area. I have provided an illustration of the property, the subject lands, how it looks as of yesterday. There used to be an existing single family dwelling, but was demolished in anticipation for site works. In terms of proposal, they're proposing to change the zoning on the subject lands from R1A to R2 to allow for the construction of 2 semi-detached buildings, which would be creating a total of 4 dwelling units. So it is changing from R1A to R2 to simply facilitate this semi-detached use with no additional special provisions needed. The buildings will be constructed to meet the requirements of the R2 zone. The slide I have here is to illustrate what is being the proposed units that the applicant has put forward. As you can see, they're quite attractive and would fit well within the context and character of the neighborhood of Bay Street there. The applicant, Mr. Fields, has worked with staff previously on other residential builds along Bay Street, which are equally compatible and attractive, so I was happy to see him back in business. In terms of circulation and the application itself, a concept plan was provided by Mr. Fields. We did circulate the plan and application for agency and department comments, and there was nothing in particular to flag. A few technical comments were provided with regard to the county in the future requiring the road widening to rectify the subject land's encroachment into the sidewalk, and future confirmation of servicing and connections. Staff did receive a single letter of concern from the public, and this was from a neighboring property owner, and that was received on May 12th. The letter outlined questions regarding what development was taking place, who the units were to be sold to, and where parking would be located. To clarify, as previously presented, this is a proposal for 2 semi-detached structures that would create 4 new residential units. It is my understanding that the units will be homeowner occupied, not as rentals. I would like to clarify this, council, as you are aware from previous presentations, that we zone for land use permissions, not people's permissions. So there's no guarantee on who the future owners may or may not be. But as you can see from the previous illustrations, these are quite quite attractive units and would fare really well in that community. And just to add that the proposal itself would be built to fit the R2 zone and meet those zone requirements. In terms of next steps, there will be a recommendation report to council and future severance application to split the semis and those individual units. At this time, there's no major issues which would need further actions. So staff feel confident bringing the recommendation report to council for consideration as soon as possible. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to respond to any questions that council or the public may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Any questions from the committee? Councilor Brand-Passen.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Question to the planner. When I look on the map, can I just assume that that was originally surveyed as two lots that have merged in title with one big house put on the center of it? And, you know, one of the things that we'll be looking at is to resever them back into two separate lots?
Through Madam Chair and to the councillor, I don't believe these were these might have been individual lots in the past, but this is not a result of a recent merger. This was not something brought up by the applicant. I believe, if anything, this is a quite old law that has existed for quite a while.
Anything further?
Well, no, I didn't think it was recent. Like, I'm assuming that when it was originally surveyed 100 some odd years ago, and somebody built a big house and they bought two lots to fit it on, and they have merged over the years, or many years ago, and now each of the portions will be the equivalent of the other lots that are already on the street. So I don't see it as a big issue.
Okay, is there anyone online that wishes to speak to the application? I don't see any registered speakers. Thanks, Scott. Does somebody wish to move staff's recommendation? Councillor Huffman, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All those in favor? And that is carried. Next application is staff report CD 2137. This is an application been received for a draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment to establish a 101 units plan of subdivision. It is proposed to rezone the subject lands from development zone to urban residential type 2 and urban residential type 4 zone with a special provision to reduce the exterior side yard setback for corner lots from 6 meters to 3 meters. Ad Thompson Road Inc. on behalf of Robert and Thomas and Scott Thompson and agent Douglas Valley, John Douglas Valley Limited, have put forth the application affecting the lands described as 220 Thompson Road West in Waterford. And Mohammed, if you could please present your report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and the Council. I hope you can see my slides.
Yep, we can. Thanks.
Thank you. Through Madam Chair to the Council, the subject land is located at the southern periphery of Waterford urban boundary with a total 7.85 hectares of lands. As you can see in the slide, the subject land is surrounded by protected industrial area at the east and north side along Blue Line Road and Thompson Road West. To the west and south, the land is surrounded by agricultural lands. In the official plan, it is designated as urban residential and zoned as development in the Norfolk County zoning bylaw. The development proposal is for a draft plan of subdivision for 51 single detached units, 41 semi-detached units, and 10 townhouse units with a 0.25 hectare parkland and 0.55 hectare stormwater management pond. To implement this proposal, the zoning has to be changed from development zone to urban residential type 2 and urban residential type 4 zone. The total density would be around 13 units per hectares, which would be close to the recommended 15 unit per hectares as per official plan. With the application, we received various supporting reports, including a planning justification report, a functional servicing report, a traffic impact study, technical report, and a Minister of Environment D-series guideline analysis, which is due to the land proximity to industrial activities. We have received staff and agency comments. The key concerns raised by the development engineering is the proposal of a stormwater runoff outlet that is to be connected with Waterford Storm Municipal Drain System. Engineering staff recommended that to provide a re-evaluation of the original drain system and report of the Waterford South Municipal Drain System if the applicant wish to connect this with the drain system. So, Madam Chair, this slide identifies 3 industrial activities adjacent to the subject land. And this includes Norfolk Disposal 1 at the north side, which is used for parking and repair of their fleet and disposal trucks and large waste bins. The other one is Norfolk Disposal 2 at the west side, which is used as a waste transfer station where the waste is sorted, stored, weighed, and shipped. And the last one is Lafarge, Canada at the west side, which is a ready mix plant and a class 2 industrial use as per Ministry of Environment. We have received comments from on behalf of all these 3 industrial categories and industrial category operators, and their concerns are mainly about land use compatibility of the proposed development. Ministry of Environment provides certain guidelines when a sensitive land use such as residential use is proposed adjacent to influence area of industrial activities. This guideline is known as D-series guideline, and within the D-series guideline, there are categories such as D4, which is the guideline for land use conflict with a waste disposable site, and D6, which is the guidelines for land use conflict with different categories of industrial activities. The comment letters from these operators identified that the recommended 70-meter separation has not been proposed. D4 guideline for the waste disposable site was not included, and overall no or minimal mitigation measures has been identified. We have sent these concerns to the agent quite some time ago and still waiting for a response. So the next step would be to receive a stormwater management solution from the applicant and a revised D-series guideline analysis, which will incorporate the mitigation measures. Staff will record further review before a recommendation report. That's everything from me. Agent Valley Engineering, I think is present to present the application also, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Huffman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Through you to Mohammed. When you were speaking about the 2 sites there for Lafarge and Norfolk Disposal, you referred to them on the west side. I'm not really good at this stuff, but I'm pretty sure it's the east side.
At the east side. If I'm saying west, then I think I made a mistake. At the east side.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, thank you.
So on the screen, if you can follow my cursor, that's where the ready mix plant is.
I'm going to have some questions, Mohammed, but I'd like to hear Mr. Valley's presentation first, and then we'll come back to it. Any further questions from the committee? Okay, John, if you're on the line.
Actually, it's Eldon Darbus, and I'll be making the presentation on behalf of our company. Do I have control to make my presentation?
You should.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, I believe my presentation is visible now. Okay, well, thank you very much for the opportunity to present this afternoon. My name is Eldon Darbison. I'm a registered professional planner. Oh. Okay, let me try this again. Okay. I'll turn off my video. Okay, I'll try this now.
If it assists Mr. Darbison, what you would have to do is you have to do a share screen instead of a slide present. I believe you can only see the slide deck at this time, but the rest of the committee cannot.
Okay, so I apologize. I opened the share tray. Oh, there it is. Okay, got it. Okay, thank you for that. How's that?
That's great.
Okay, very good. Okay, I'll start again. Again, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. My name is Eldon Darbison. I'm a registered professional planner with G. Douglas Valley Link. Our clients are 80 Thompson Road Incorporated. So the county planner has introduced the location of the land Waterford along with the surrounding land uses. It was identified industrial lands including Lafarge and Norfolk disposal services are located to the north and east. There are also a few houses located near Thompson Road on Washington Street. The proposed draft plan includes 100 units, which have been shared in shaded colors on this slide to show a mix of 3 unit types, a stormwater management pond, a road network, and sidewalks. We've received comments from agencies and consulting parties regarding the design concept and how it relates with the adjacent industries. We are working to address the comments, which will be submitted to the county for consideration shortly. Based on our initial design of the proposed plan of subdivision, we believe it best considers the surrounding industrial nature and truck traffic. Furthermore, CCS Engineering was hired to address the land use compatibility in light of the existing industrial uses, noise, and traffic. Our original consultant was Rubidium, but the founder of that company has passed away, and we have since obtained CCS Engineering to assist. It is proposed to rezone the lands from development zone to R2 and 4 categories to facilitate the 3 forms of housing. The parkland and stormwater management facility will be rezoned to O-base. Specifically, we're proposing to amend the exterior side yard setback of the residential zones from 6 meters to 3 meters. This will allow for more efficient use of lands, and it brings the corner lot dwellings closer to the streets. As discussed in the forthcoming CCS engineering report, we are proposing backlotting with a noise barrier fence to physically separate the industrial area and road traffic from the neighborhood. We've received comments at the pre-consultation stage and during the application process to consider design changes as shown on this slide. The comments suggested that dwellings should consider avoiding backlotting and that dwellings could face the surrounding industrial uses. To achieve this, a parallel street to Thompson Road and Blue Line Road would need to be designed. Along Thompson Road, there is a hydro easement, which is that gray area along the north side. This design concept avoids the easement and the potential need to relocate the hydro corridor. This shows how backlotting has been removed from the east side of the development by introducing a parallel street to Blue Line Road. That would be the increased separation distance. This design concept would allow 6 dwellings to face the easterly industrial lands. It also shows that barrier fencing will still be necessary for some properties with flankages along Blue Line Road to protect amenity spaces. If the dwellings are oriented to face the industries, future residents would experience visual and noise impacts. There are compatibility challenges here. Thompson Road and Line Road do not have attractive residential neighborhood characteristics. They are industrial. In consultation with CCS Engineering, it is our opinion that if the industries can be seen, then you're more likely to create a setting for complaints, and complaints trigger upgrades for industries to meet ministry standards. We believe it is important to ask the question, why would residents want to face a double parallel road, industries, and truck traffic? If you put the unattractive noise source in front of your face, you'll likely complain about it. We're trying to prevent complaints. Front yards that face the industries may sterilize the enjoyment of the front yards and the social benefits experienced from front yard neighbors. There's also an increased cost to servicing with this approach, as only one side of the parallel road provides servicing to dwellings. The lands are intended for residential development in a rural setting. Sidewalks and parkland promote social interaction. The design increases the depth of the periphery lots for a greater rear yard amenity space for features such as pools, hot tubs, decks, gazebos, gardens. The increased depth allows for landscaping, the provision of noise barrier fencing. Internally, houses face each other, which helps achieve an attractive neighborhood and increased social interaction. We designed the plan of subdivision in consideration of the area industries with an out of mind approach to avoid the visual and noise impacts. This is why we are of the opinion that the proposed backlotting design with the rear yard barrier fence is more appropriate than having dwellings face the industries. In closing, design comments received have been investigated. We believe the proposed design concept has the greatest benefit for the future development of the neighborhood, area industries, and the county. It meets the intent of the official plan. The development is supported by the land use compatibility report prepared by CCS Engineering, and our pending resubmission has the benefit of including the land use compatibility report, and we will work with the county staff to address comments and concerns. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I have to note that Mr. Anderson, from CCS, he was intending to speak, but he's run into a conflict. He's asked me to convey 5 brief points at this time, if I may. Assuming so. We retained CCS Engineering to provide an update to the original rubidium compatibility report. The new report has been considered in light of county comments and comments provided by IBI and MHBC on behalf of Lafarge and Norfolk Disposal Services. The report recommends that a noise barrier fence be constructed along Thompson Road and Blue Line Road. There are construction suggestions and warning clauses to be implemented, and the report does not recommend to face dwellings towards the industries and truck traffic. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you very much.
So a question that I have, what would be the basis that you think that this would be okay to not have that minimum 70-meter setback?
Through you to the chair and to council, the report that we are submitting discusses separate distances and classes of industry, and that report will be submitted in detail with our forthcoming submission. The report discusses the appropriateness of the noise barrier and how it successfully mitigates noise impacts, especially from the truck traffic on the roads. And it also includes additional warning clauses and suggestions for housing construction in terms of location of bedrooms, and because it's from an interior design perspective, which we'd be look forward to presenting to county staff.
Okay, I do have more questions for county staff, but are there questions from the committee at this time for the engineer? Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Through you to Mr. Darvinson and John. I mean, obviously, this is in my ward, and I do have some concerns. I don't really quite know where to start. I guess I would need to see a few more conceptual drawings. Some of it is, as you know, we don't have the benefit of being planners and engineers, so we have to. It works out better for me when I see things that are a little bit more tactile, I suppose is the word I want to see. I guess my question is. One, I couldn't imagine reducing any kind of setback in a situation such as this, and just wondering too about the traffic in terms of going onto Thompson Road and what thought has gone into that, because to me that would be, this is quite a dense residential proposal that you're talking about, and it would definitely increase the amount of traffic on Thompson, where there already is quite a bit of congestion with that side road on the blue line, with the church, with the school, and with the Norfolk disposal to the north of Thompson there. Yeah, I don't know. So if you can answer some of those questions, that would be great.
You'd be happy to. As part of our application, we have a traffic impact study that was completed and submitted. It took a look at Washington Street, Blue Line Road, Thompson Road. It looked at intersections. It looked at geometric design. And the recommendations of this report here speak to that there's no physical road improvements needed or intersection improvements needed now or into the foreseeable future. Part of that reason is because the accesses have been pushed away from the intersection. And that report will be reviewed by engineering staff.
Do you have a date as to when that traffic study was done?
Yeah, I've got it. I'm just pulling it up right now. Yes, March 2020.
March 2020.
Yep.
So while we were at the start of a pandemic, we did a traffic study. So that's, and if I'm not mistaken, it could have also coincided with March break where there wasn't any school. So, I mean, that's not a very feasible date for a traffic study. I would respectfully request that we look at doing one during the day when the buses are coming out and people are leaving their work from Norfolk Disposal and Lafarge, etc. It's one thing to have a traffic study, but it's another thing to actually be a resident in this town and know those roads and know that it's extremely busy, and especially the way that the streets line up with St. James Street and Washington, and that kind of that unique turn there with on Blue Line with the car wash and the dog groomer there. So I would really prefer that we look at another for a traffic. Thank you.
Councillor Martin and then Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Through you, this is maybe more of a comment for Councillor Huffman and my colleagues, just to get it out there. I know I agree with you. We're not planners and we're not engineers, so it is sometimes very difficult. And selfishly, when we look at our communities, that we can get a traffic study that might not suggest that any changes are required, but we know the impending traffic flow that's going to come from these developments, and sometimes we don't want that. It may not be a requirement, but there's certainly going to be an influx, and we don't want to see that in our communities. So I hear what you're saying. To you, Councillor Huffman, you know, if this was my ward, I would have extreme concerns as well, because I just look at this property and I truly think it doesn't scream residential to me. I don't know that I would want to have property near there. And you say that, and I think it's a silly comment to make, because obviously if people don't want to live there, they won't purchase that there. But in Port Dover, we have some community members who back onto a cattle farm. and the setbacks were reduced by a former council. And they, I know this is not apples to apples and it shouldn't burden this report, but from my experience, they purchased those homes and then the cows are in their backyards and it smells and there's flies and there are setbacks. And what that does is become a burden for a council member, for our bylaw services, for planning department, and so on. So as I'd like to see some type of development evolve and work with the proponents on this file, but I don't know that a setback reduction is a good idea at this location either. Those are my only comments. Thanks.
Councillor Columbus, go ahead. We can kind of stick with questions here at this point, and then we'll come back for discussion.
Thank you, Mayor Choff. And question to Eldon. Under the development engineering comments of staff, item 8, it states the west half of Blue Line Road and south half of Thompson Road to be built to urban standards, which includes curb gutter and sidewalks to the south property line and the west property line, respectively, from the intersection of Blue Line Road and Thompson Road. Is your client, the applicant, is he aware that there's likely a contribution to this road improvement? Can you comment on that, please?
Yes, this is part of the draft plan of subdivision process, and we are working with engineering staff. With subdivision development, there are required upgrades and contributions to be made, and yes, we are having those discussions, and especially when we get through our second submission, the conversations will continue.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? I do believe we have one registered speaker. Jim Anderson, are you on the line?
So is unable to speak. He is the engineer for CCS Engineering who prepared the land compatibility report, speaking to the separation distances and noise barrier fence. Unfortunately, he had conflict, which is why I had provided those quick 5 points on his behalf.
Okay. Are there any other members of the public online that wish to speak to this application? Okay, so just coming back around to staff, council will have any further questions from staff? Councillor Columbus, I see your hand.
Sorry, I forgot to put it down.
Okay. Mr. Valley, I see your hand, but you did have the opportunity there with your with Eldon speaking. So is there something else you need to add? Because it needs to be brief. You're on mute, sir.
Sorry about that. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
I'm just allowing you for 1 second because you guys already had your time allotment through Eldon there. So unless you're speaking as a member of the community.
So we were caught a bit by surprise, found out actually that this was coming to this meeting through a member of the public, not from Norfolk County. So we have a bit of a challenge here where we do have a specialist report for you on the compatibility, and I understand Councillor Huffman and Martin have expressed concerns on that. We do have a professional report, has not been submitted yet to the county. That representative was to be here tonight, but of course on the short notice there was a problem with that. We're hearing some of the concerns. I'm not sure as to how this works with the current system of committee and public meeting and then council and our opportunity to present that report to council in the future. And if maybe it could be an explanation of sort of process as to how we introduce that report to council.
Suppose, Tricia, you could speak to that, but I'm going to assume we would allow them then if they wanted to speak at the council and committee meeting when it comes forward.
Thank you. So just to clarify around the process. So yeah, the appropriate notification and communication went through staff. And if they have additional technical reports, all of that will be collected and incorporated as part of the recommendation report, as with any other planning application. And if they wanted to speak further, they could we could have them on as a delegation as appropriate.
Okay, Councillor Van Passen? This would be directed to staff at this point.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a question for staff. I'd like a little bit more information on the D4 and D6 guidelines. Like, I'd like to know if I wanted to put a garbage transfer station across from a 100-unit subdivision, what standards I'd have to follow if the reverse was on the application. And, you know, just to be quoted a D4 and D6, and among planners, I'm sure they all know what that is, but I don't know what that is. So if I could get the background on that, I would appreciate it.
So, Madam Chair, Council Van Passen. So, D6 guidelines provide certain categories. Among those categories, D4 deals with waste disposal, operations, and related operations. And D6 is a overarching category of all the industries. And within D6, there are separate categories of different kinds of industries, which are identified as Industry 1, Industry 2, and Industry 3 categories. Based on the amount of operation, the amount of noise creation, and amount of storage outside storage facilities, amount of pollution, amount of activities. The subject 3 industries, all of them are considered as standard, industrial standard 2 category. And each category has different criteria to follow, different separation distance to maintain. And also just to note that D6 guideline is a guideline, it's not a requirement, but this guideline provides the direction what would be the separations. And also in addition to the separation distance, it also mentions about various mitigation measures, which can be various, which can have various components. For these 3 industries, we are looking for pollution, odor, noise, vibration, and visual appeal. So I would probably want to see these items are addressed through the D6 analysis.
Further, Councillor Van Passen?
Well, just since I'm a glutton for punishment, would staff mind just emailing that out as an information memo so I can sit around and read through it one time in my life just to get a little bit more background on this, if that's possible?
I can certainly do that. I'm going to make some a memo and I'll send it to you, all councils.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mohammed. So I just want to understand, I don't know, Mohammed, this to you, Tricia, it's difficult because I know you weren't here back in this process, but there's something I'm kind of missing here, or I just want to understand. So the property is currently zoned development, correct?
Correct.
What occurred back in November 2018 then with previous council?
So there were, as far as I'm concerned, there was a severance application, and which actually divided the original land into 2 separate lots. Other than that, I don't know anything about in 2018. Maybe John or Eldon might also help us to answer if there is anything that we don't know.
Yes, I can help speak. So once the severance was done, we were left with these lands for the subdivision, and we have since put together a submission package based on our pre-consultation with staff at that time, which was back in July of 2019. So this is the first time that council is seeing this application.
Okay, thanks, Eldon. So Mohammed, I understand that it's within, the urban boundary, but, it's the same with, we can't do anything about it at this point in time, where the hub lands were once a designated industrial. And of course, within the official plan, then that, residential, it was changed within the official plan, although the zoning wasn't changed to be residential. So in this case, what other opportunity or what other, is there any mechanism for a portion of that land to remain as commercial lands? I mean, I know it's development, but for it not to be changed to residential, I'm just not sure of the tools, what is available once it's brought in.
Madam Mayor, the zone is still development. The designation is urban residential.
Okay. So it's the same. It was changed previously then.
Yeah,
with the
but
new
that
official
doesn't mean that it cannot be used for other uses. A development means it is waiting for changes. So
if I can just, so once it's designated within the official plan as urban residential, even though the zoning change has not happened yet, is there a legal obligation then that still occurs?
well, the expectation is it will be a residential development since it is designated as urban residential. But again, given the context, there is no reason that an applicant can ask for a change, and which can be any other uses that compatible with other surrounding uses.
Okay, let me rephrase my question. Can council refuse to make that change even though it's designated within the official plan as urban residential?
Council can, Madam Chair, council can refuse any developments, regardless its designation, based on their own judgment. So that's what I can say. Otherwise,
well, yes, no, but if the application went to, so let's say we refused it and it went to LPAT, I guess is what my question is. Because designated within the official plan, does that mean we would have less ground to stand on? My concerns are we have very limited industrial land in Norfolk County, and we have a, you know, I think Lafarge's letter, I agree with every single point that they have put in there. So we have limited industrial lands in Norfolk County. Yes, we need housing, but we need industry. And I'm not to go and start picking on the couple of industries that we have here. And the other counselor said it perfectly. I mean, Councillor Martin, I think you said that you wouldn't purchase there, but then you went on and explained a little bit more. I think that's the problem, is a lot of people, then you went on and said how they did buy homes knowing that they were going to be next to a field. I mean, it's no different than somebody buying a home next to an airport and then, you know, complaining on a daily basis about airplanes keeping them up at night. So I would be curious, one, to know what, you know, what options are available to council for it not to be switched over to a residential designation, and as well, you know, what our standing would be, I guess, with LPAT is what I'm asking. And the other thing I can say, you know, I also agree with, like I said, with Lafarge's, all of the points that they've made. In terms of especially in terms of the compatibility with the uses adjacent, and there is no way, regardless of any report, that I would support a reduction in any of the setback requirements either. So I think you know, putting this kind of density next to, again, what is very limited industrial lands in Norfolk County in general, you know, is a terrible idea in my opinion.
I think Brandon want to respond to some of the questions.
What's that, sorry?
If it's okay, Madam Mayor, I could just do a quick addressing of that item.
Perfect. Thanks, Brandon.
So I think we agree, staff agree, that what we're hearing is the application requires more consideration. Staff have pointed that out as well, and I think the applicant's indicating that they have some additional analysis for the land use compatibility. We've seen this a number of times, and I think what was pointed out with the official plan designation, when you have protected employment and now urban residential in close proximity, that is a bit of a challenge. There's not much land use transition. Typically, you would look at other options to transition and buffer, so you would minimize any potential future conflicts between the two. And so when you are introducing new residential uses in close proximity to existing industry, it is quite important to do what you can for ensuring that the protection of those industries to keep operating in accordance with whatever approvals they have. There are some possible ways to look at it, but I think that's what staff are hearing loud and clear from today, and I think the applicant as well, that land use compatibility, separation distance, are there other options as to how the development could be oriented, designed, or designated, zoned, buffered, oriented, mitigation measures. All those are items that will be follow-ups today and can be addressed in a recommendation report. And also I would suggest that if it's appropriate and if council is looking for that, you can definitely seek advice as to where you might stand in terms of any recommendation. Staff will bring you forward a professional recommendation, and then in terms of your decision and how that might play out long term, that might be some legal advice to seek at the time.
Thanks, Brandon. Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there in terms of, transition lands. And that's why I was asking about, commercial sort of development, not industrial, but commercial, through if there's the opportunity to rezone it in that direction.
I think we'll explore all those options with the applicant, and in the recommendation report, we can identify if that bears any fruit or where we're at.
Do you need any? I mean, we can just still receive, move staff's recommendation, and then you'll take all those comments with you, correct?
That's correct. All this is part of the statutory public meeting. So this feedback is appropriate and helpful for us in terms of the next steps. That's what this meeting is for. So
excellent. Okay, if I could have a mover for staff's recommendation. Councillor Huffman, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? And that's carried. Final report, staff report CD 2142. That's an application has been received to rezone a portion of the subject lands from urban residential type 4 zone R4 to urban residential type 6 zone R6 with site-specific special provisions to permit a 5-story 48-unit apartment building and additional site specifics for the remainder of the subject lands to permit a 61-unit townhouse development. Submitted concurrently is 28 CDPL 2021033 to request approval of draft plan of vacant land condominium. IBI Group, on behalf of Warren Sinclair Construction, have put forth the applications affecting the legally described lands identified as part lots 16 and 17 from the geographic township of Woodhouse, designated as parts 1 and 2, Plan 37R9515, and parts 1 and 2, Plan 37R10116, together with an easement over part 4 on Plan 37R9515, as in NR 602508 Simcoe. That's a bit of a mouthful. Mohammed, I guess you're going to present this one as well.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. To Madam Chair, to the Council, this is a 3.85 hectares of lands located in Simcoe, right at the west and south side of Norview Lodge. As you can see, the site is surrounded by institutional, public infrastructure, and agricultural and natural features. The official plan designation is urban residential and currently is zoned as urban residential type 4 with a holding provision. The current zoning was established in 2005 for a 102 units, 1-story townhouse development, which is intended for adult lifestyle market. To Madam Chair, the new proposal includes 61 townhouse units and 40 apartment units in a 5-story building as a condominium development. A condominium application has been submitted with a zoning bylaw amendment application. To implement the proposal, the zoning of the townhouse part will remain residential type 4 with some new special provisions, and the apartment part will change to residential type 6. We have received required drawings and reports, including a planning justification report, a functional servicing report, storm water management report, a traffic impact study, and an environmental impact study. We have received a number of staff and agency comments. Northview Lodge has also reviewed and the proposal, and they also provided comments on that. So, Madam Chair, based on staff comments, we have identified that a number of items that require further review and discussion. And this includes further detail of the stormwater management design and potentially an agreement with the county for utilizing county-owned stormwater management pond. This issue, sorry, my apology for. So the issue of access, that is another issue actually, to Norfolk Lodge Ring Road. This is originally constructed only for firefighting purpose and is still required to be unobstructed all time as per fire comments. The subject land has an easement on a part of this ring road for emergency access, and this is not for actually servicing easement. And Northview Lodge has a portion of parking space that is encroached on a portion of the subject land, and this requires a solution between this. According to Northview Lodge, the parking space is already overloaded, particularly during the weekend time, and cars are even lined up along Rob Blake Way during the peak hour. This may need a collaborative approach between Northview Lodge and the applicant to resolve. Staff also recommended a continuous pedestrian connection inside the property up to the apartment building. So we did not receive any public comment yet. And the next steps, we are identifying that we need further correspondence regarding the stormwater management design. We'd also require further discussion to resolve the access issue that I mentioned about the Northview Lodge Ring Road and their parking encroachment on the applicant's land. Staff will keep working with the agent before a recommendation report will be produced. Agent David Galbraith from IBI Group is presenting their application. And before that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mohammed? Okay, IBI, if you would like to go ahead. Oh, Councillor Taylor, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. I just question the compatibility of this type of a development next to Northview, as you were kind of getting to there. I just need to see more justification, or this might even be a question to the developer and IBI as we get there. But yeah, if you just, how dense can we actually get beside such a sensitive use? Because I mean, I even think, you know, during construction, the headaches that would be caused in Northview, and I mean, we're giving up so much land. If we ever have an opportunity to expand or upgrade the facility there, what kind of issues would we run into then? And I mean, I just need to see a bit more of a justification there, I think.
To Madam Chair, to Councillor Taylor, there are two issues here. One is the nuisance that might create during the construction phase, which we can address through a construction management plan, and we can review that and we can provide comments on that. In terms of land use conflict, both land would be residential use. So the Northview Lodge is a residential use. So there is, from the residential use perspective, there is no conflict. But in terms of density, we might also have to think about how actually that might impact the Northview Lodge existing uses. For example, parking uses, or emergency access and vehicle movement through the road, and they are also proposing some easement activity through the ring road, so we have to look at that too.
Okay, thank you. And I think I'd like to see an extensive construction review at that point before we get too far along or on that particular end of things. But I've definitely got some questions for IBI after their report. So thank you.
Okay, with the presenter from IBI. Oh, Councillor Martin, sorry.
Thanks. Through you, Mayor Chop, to Mohammed. I'm actually interested in hearing more about the construction management plan and what it entails, because I fully agree with Councillor Taylor. And I actually received a call from someone today that said, you know, what about hospice care centers or something that fits in more with what's already there? And so that's neither here nor there for the construction management plan. But as an example, in Port Dover, we've been working on they have been working on construction of Dover Wharf on the water side. And the road, Harbor Street, has been closed for 6 months. And I've been working with staff, emailing staff, working with business owners to try and get that road opened. And council really has no say in that. So I would hate to see a situation where a development occurs around Norview Lodge here. And not only is it fully disruptive to the retirement community that lives in there, but also having no say with the council members should they come across an issue that they bring forward to staff. So could you fill me in a little bit in what is entailed in a construction management plan and what stage that should happen when we're looking at development?
Mohammed, maybe just for council's benefit too, you could just touch on, I think, you know, the difference between this property and Waterford is that this has already got the residential zoning that's on the property, correct? So maybe you just touch on the difference between the R4 of what could be versus this request to move to R6.
So, Madam Chair, so the difference between the previous one and this one is already R4, residential type 4, which allows townhouse developments. So as I mentioned previously, there is another application approved in 2005, I believe, that was for 102 units of townhouse developments, which was triggered for retirees. Now they proposed a new development, which includes an apartment building in addition to the townhouse development. So the townhouse development is for residential type 4, and the apartment building is moving to residential type 6. Residential type 6 allowed apartment buildings. I'm not sure if this is the answer you're looking for.
Yeah, I just heard it from both Councillor Taylor and Councillor Martin. I just think it's important to understand you can't strip properties of their zoning. And as we move into, you know, another official plan review, that's why it's so important, like in the context of Waterford. And I think, Councillor Martin, was that yourself that said about the hospice? I mean, I think that's a wonderful idea as well. But unfortunately, that zone, you know, unless they're going to make the application to change the zoning, you can't prevent them from doing what the property is already zoned for. So again, I think just as this council looks to doing our official plans, this is why it's important to get it right, because then you lose the ability to have the tools to control some of the stuff. Brandon, I see your hands up there.
Oh, sorry, Mayor Chop. I'd still like Mohammed to weigh in.
Yeah, I'm just going to let Brandon answer. I think he had his hand. He just want to make comment, and then we'll come back to your question.
Yep, thanks for that. And I was just supplementing it with the other component of the question, which is the construction management plan, which is typically much later in the process once they've gone through the land use approvals. And it could be a condition of approval that council could put in this vacant land condominium condition to do a construction management plan. And if there's any guiding criteria for that, that would help. So typically it does happen later, but through this, it could be a condition of, and then they do it closer to the construction time frame once they got the site plan done.
So Brenna, it's something that happens on every development planning staff, just work on it and see the construction management plan through. But like similarly, we've discussed approving site plan, this council, which is normally a staff thing. So or you're saying that this could come for council with, you know, before or when we look at approving a staff recommendation, we could also then have that discussion of a construction management plan being part of the approval.
Through the chair, it may not be typical to have a construction management plan for every single development,
No.
but if it is key when dealing with certain circumstances such as this, typically it could be a condition of approval. And then it would happen later on. And yes, through the appropriate staff, they're involved in managing the road and engineering and transportation. If it is something that council is raising as a concern and an issue and from a public standpoint, then I think staff would work with the applicant as to what kind of information can be provided for the recommendation meeting, which could then give some guidance to how that plan is prepared as a condition. Is one suggestion, but we can take that back and consider it.
Councillor Van Passen, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. When I looked at all these maps and concepts, you know, I thought about that. It is a sensitive use at Norview, but we do have a public works yard that butts up to this property, and wondered if is it possible to look into a temporary construction access from the backside through the property that the county owns and try to mitigate everything. So might be something else to talk to Public Works about, whether that's even feasible or not, but that might be helpful as part of a construction plan if need be.
Councillor Columbus, go ahead.
Yes, to staff, what are the dedication of parkland? Any thoughts on that? Because this is quite a dense development.
Through Madam Chair to Councillor Columbus, the applicant proposed a community garden that is at the beginning of the, near the main entrance of the whole development. Other than that, we did not discuss about that yet. There will be parkland dedication. So if there is no parkland provided or not enough parkland provided, then the rest of the part has to be through parkland dedication. Other than that, there are natural features at the south side of the development. So there are lots of open spaces at the back.
Thank you.
Okay, are we ready for IBI?
Hi, this is Dave Galbraith here. I did send in a presentation to Clerk's Department on Friday. I was wondering if they could pull it up.
To Mr. Galbraith, I'm just pulling it up right now. Would you like me to present on your behalf?
Sure, yeah, and I'll give you some cues to advance slides as we go along. All right, so good afternoon, Mayor Chop and members of council. My name is Dave Galbraith, and I'm a manager of planning with IBI Group out of Waterloo. Here on behalf of the applicant Sinclair Homes, who are advancing a zone change and vacant land condominium application for the site. I'm not going to try to repeat the legal description for the site, as it might take me the whole 5 minutes to do so. But thank you, Mohammed, for your overview of the applications and your presentation. I'd like to provide a brief presentation to council on the location of the site, some of the history of the property, the proposed development concept now being advanced, and the required planning applications. So both the applications that are before council today and the site plan applications that are also being advanced. Next slide, please. So the subject property is located off of Rob Lake Way, which surrounds the south end of the Norview Lodge retirement residence. The proposed entrance to the site is actually to the north of Norview Lodge, and then it would wrap in to the back of the property. Some of the more interesting property configurations I've ever seen. The site has been long contemplated for development, residential development, dating back to 2005. There were earlier townhouse developments that were advanced for the site. But ultimately they were never, obviously never brought through to construction by the previous owner. The site has an area of approximately 3.9 hectares and is bound by agricultural lands to the west and environmental features to the south, as well as Norview to the north. Next slide, please. Back in probably around 2010, the site was cleared and recreated around the development of Norview Lodge. And over time, there's been some overgrown vegetation that's encroached into the site from the west and the south. That line you can kind of see on this image here. The light green is kind of more recent vegetation that's come into the site, whereas the darker green forest is the older woodlot and surrounding natural features around the environmental features there. Next slide, please. This slide makes a little more sense within the context of our planning justification report, but it summarizes the location of the site within the town of Simcoe, geographically located on the west end of the city, south again of Norview Lodge, an employment area along Queensview, and then some residential lands to the east. You'll note in the next slide that the apartment block is proposed in the southeast corner of the property, which generally aligns with the, is generally surrounded by an environmental area. So even though there's a change of density proposed here, it's largely buffered by the environmental features to the southeast of the site and to the east of the site. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the proposed site plan currently being advanced by the applicant. As Mohammed had mentioned, 61 freehold townhouse units are being proposed, as well as an apartment building containing up to 48 units. In terms of overall density, we're talking about very similar numbers to the townhouse development that was advanced and approved by council back in 2005. Each of the townhouse units will have a minimum of 1-car garage and a corresponding parking space in the driveway, as well as some visitor parking spaces scattered throughout the development. And several of the townhouses, including the corner units, will have 2-car garages. Parking for the apartment building will be provided in a common parking lot. And the drive aisle for the apartment building, you'll see there's kind of a circular component there that allows for emergency turnarounds of fire trucks should ever be required. In terms of amenity space, there are 2 larger landscaped areas proposed for the townhouse blocks, which are going to be programmed as community gardens. The applicant has submitted a site plan application, so details of those community gardens are provided within the landscape plans for the townhouse component. And then on the apartment block, there's landscaped areas that are being provided, as well as amenity space along the ground floor of the building. One interesting element that has not been touched on yet is that the development is planned to be developed as a net zero community, which will exude a very high degree of environmental sustainability. The building has also been designed to be sympathetic to its natural surroundings by providing additional buffers to the adjacent natural features to the south of the site. If you will pull up the plans from the 2005 concept, you'll see that the townhouses actually went much closer to the south property line, and now we're talking about a much more generous buffer to the natural features to the south. Next slide, please. So the next few slides highlight some of the elevations for the towns and the apartment buildings. Here you'll see some of the typical townhouse designs that are being advanced. These will be bungalow-style townhouses similar to those recently constructed at Westwood Trail by the applicant. Next slide, please. And you can skip to the next one as well. So this is some conceptual elevations that have been advanced for the apartment development. You'll see there's a separate treatment for the ground floor where there will be party room, amenity room, main lobby, elevators, and then a number of residential units as well. And then the upper levels of the building will be fully residential in nature. Next slide, please. And next slide. One more, thanks. So in order to advance the development, my client has submitted a change application, vacant land condominium application for the property. The vacant land condo application is really to create the blocks, so the individual townhouse blocks, the common drive aisle, as well as a block for the for the apartment. Corresponding with that application, a number of site-specific amendments to the bylaw are being requested for the townhouse. So you'll see a 3.1 meter exterior side yard, which is the closest point of the townhouses in the northwest corner of the site. permitting a 6-meter rear yard, which is typical for similar style townhouses along the western edge of the property, permitting a 35% front yard landscaped area, and that's just, again, in relation to the housing tenure that's provided here, just the parking area takes up a bit more space than is typically provided. And then permitting a site-specific parking rate of 2.25 parking spaces per unit for the towns. In terms of the apartments, the entirety of the apartment block is proposed to be rezoned R6. And the next two site-specific amendments here are really technical in nature. The block would not have any frontage onto a municipal street. And so, so a zero front yard is proposed. And then for the apartment block, parking ratio of 1.21 spaces per unit is proposed. So as part of the application, a parking study was submitted, which compared parking rates and observed usage of similar developments, and both the rates for the townhouses and the apartments were determined to be justifiable. So at this point, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to delegate to council, and I'm available for question.
Councilor Martin, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Chop, to David. Am I oriented properly when I look at that map? Is the parking lot for the apartment building directly behind Norview Lodge?
Through you, Mayor Chop, yes, that's correct. The parking area for the apartment block would be just to the south of the emergency fire route that kind of goes around Norview Lodge.
And then I'm sure you do if you're net zero and you're looking to add on with the existing features, but is there, some kind of distance between the back there? I know that Norview Lodge has a garden patio and they host outdoor events for residents and whatnot. So is there a bunch of, is there a separation there?
I can't confirm the dimension to the actual Norview building. I don't have that available right now. We can confirm that through staff, but that amenity space is fully within Norview's property. And then on the apartment block, there would be a landscape buffer that's typically about 3 meters in width along my client's land.
Okay, and then my other concern would just be if the apartment building is behind and it's not directly behind as the parking lot would be, but then is it going to create massive overcast, and then we've taken away all of the enjoyable outdoor space at the Norview Lodge for the residents when they go out and use that patio? It looks like it's off a little bit, but that's not my wheelhouse to do any shade studies, so that would be a concern I'd have as well, that they're still able to use that space as freely and openly as they already do.
Sure. Yeah, I totally appreciate the comment. To the extent possible, the apartment building has been located to the southeast on the site, while still observing the environmental buffers that need to be maintained. But basically, we're as far away from Norview as realistic here. Shadows aren't anticipated to be an issue at a 5-story building. Just keep in mind that the most impactful shadows will be to the east and west. It shouldn't cause any impact to Norview.
Councillor Columbus, go ahead.
Thank you. This is a vacant land condo development. How does your applicant expect to handle the garbage, the recycling and regular weekly garbage pickup?
So there's 2 elements here. So there would be each homeowner would put garbage out at the street, and there would be a public collection of waste, similar to what has been approved at Westwood Trails. In terms of the apartment building, the current plans, which are still subject to change, there would be a private garbage room, and then there would be private collection for the waste of the apartment building.
Thank you, Dave.
Councillor Taylor, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks for that clarification earlier. Yeah, that with the R4, R6 aspect of it. Where am I? So yeah, our big ticket right now is being able to use that R6 request to have some negotiations. How far along is your client willing to go with restrictions on construction? Because as it stands right now, that is my big concern. I mean, like early times, having constructions all hours of the day, that kind of stuff just can't happen in this sensitive area. So I would like to see some strict construction management proposals out there, and I'm just wondering how far are you guys willing to go with that construction management at this point?
Yeah, I totally appreciate your comment and just recognizing the sensitivity of the uses in the adjacent area. That's something that we will look at. Site plan application has been advanced for the townhouse portion of the development at this point, just so they can be processed concurrently. But we will work with staff through that process to determine how we can be sensitive as they're building out the site.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? I don't believe anybody is registered to speak, but is there any other member of the public that's online that wishes to address the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I guess, Brandon, this might be for you or Mohammed. I'm just kind of curious. You know, I think that's certainly a trend with there being residential around sort of long-term care facilities and so on. I am a little bit concerned with that, you know, increased density and, you know, same as we were talking the other areas, but, you know, the noise for the residents and so on and so forth. I mean, Norview is just so beautiful, the setting that it's in, which obviously is not going to be that way anymore once this happens. So, like, I don't know, is there a chance for sort of an increased tree buffer around there? You know, if I don't know what your thoughts are with that, you know, with that much higher density as compared to the R4.
Yeah, to the mayor, any comments that are raised, and so if there are considerations we're hearing today about the buffering, the landscape, obviously the residential and institutional setting that the existing lodge is in right now can be quite scenic, and that's an important component for the folks that are there. I guess it has been known for some time that the land around it could develop. Landscaping and a landscape plan is important. I think the applicant identified that there would be some look at landscape in terms of the buffer between, and so we can certainly follow through and talk about that.
Like I'm kind of more thinking like for the increased density that there would be some substantial sort of tree planting in those backyards all around where a fence might be between the two, so that it sort of was, you know, again, as a trade-off for the R6.
Yep, and staff and the applicant can look at that. I mean, on the one hand, there is the provision of a range of housing that can mix in here. And I think we'd point out the high degree of environmental sustainability, and that might lead to a little bit more for the vegetation and the tree planting. To be honest, many communities aspire and are trying to get development that's targeting net zero energy or greenhouse gas emission. And so if the proponent can achieve that this would actually be a landmark development for Norfolk in that regard. But I think what we're hearing is how do we do it in a compatible way with Norfolk Lodge and making sure that existing development can fit in.
I thought we already had another development in Norfolk County that was promoting itself as net zero. Somewhere in Simcoe. I remember meeting with them a long time ago.
Yep, I believe there might be one. I'm not quite sure if we have one at this scale for the towns, and then whether or not the apartment's included or not. But I think we're hearing that with the increased density, we need to look at the compatibility, the landscaping, et cetera. And I think the applicant hears that as well.
Jason, I see you've got your hand up.
Thank you. Through the chair, if it's okay to register the comment, I'll have staff take a look at There are a few developments that are going through this currently next to long-term care homes, one in Niagara at the Landhaven site. There are issues raised with regards to patient privacy and how that separation is being dealt with, and they're further advanced along, so I can make sure staff connect with the appropriate people there to see how they're commingling the two on the site.
Perfect. That'd be great. Okay, are there any further questions from the committee? Dave, did you have something else that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to note on the landscape buffering point that that's something we can work with staff on. Brandon's already said we can have those discussions. Being a net zero community, there are some implications with obviously, in order to achieve net zero, you need to be creative with the positioning of solar panels. So we really need to take an integrated approach at where we're putting additional landscaping, because obviously its positioning could create extra shadows, which could negate the possibility of creating a net zero community, right? So, but we will work with staff to see how we can create sympathetic buffers here.
But if I could, like, to me, I would be more willing to, you know, yes, achieving net zero is certainly a laudable goal, but not at the expense of long-term care home residents.
No,
so,
absolutely.
You know, if anything that I'm going to give on, it's going to be, well, you guys can't achieve net zero, but we're going to protect the residents there and what they have as much as possible if you want that increased density.
Yeah, fair enough. And I was just saying again that we'll work with staff to come up with appropriate buffering.
Okay, anything further from the committee? All right, so if I could have a mover and a seconder for staff's recommendation. Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Huffman. All those in favor? And that is carried. So I believe that's it for today. Councillor Huffman, motion to adjourn. Thank you. Seconder. Councillor Michelle, seconding that. All those in favor? And that is carried. So thanks, everyone. We will see you next Tuesday. It will likely be a 2 o'clock start for the special Board of Health meeting before Council and Committee.
Call it home. You'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home.